announce. Good evening. This is Matt Coda, and welcome to the Development Review Board meeting for April 21st, 2020. I'm the chair of the Development Review Board, and also with us tonight on the Development Review Board is Don Filbert, John Wilking, Mark Baer, Alyssa Portman, and Brian Sullivan. Jim Langdon, who's also on the DRB meeting, could not attend tonight, unless he surprises us. Jim, you're not on the phone, are you? No, I didn't think so. Also in attendance from the city of South Burlington is Marla Keene, our development review planner, and Delilah Hall, the zoning administrator. Delilah is also running this system and has control of the agenda, and they'll be going through the paces. I'm just the guy that talks. I think you all know that we'd all rather be at City Hall right now, but like the rest of the world, we're adapting to this new reality. And over the past month, I guess now, over a month, many of us had to learn how to connect online, where we would much rather be seeing each other in person. And that's true for the DRB, whether it's for our children's school or our professional obligations, or to check in with family and friends. The computer, the phone, or the tablet is now part of our new normal. For South Burlington city staff, for members of the Development Review Board, for those that have an application before City South Burlington, or members of the public, I appreciate your patience and your perseverance as we go forward together. And we will go forward. We'll keep on moving, and when we emerge from this pandemic, we'll all be better for it. So looking at the agenda, item number one, I guess we don't need to do that because there are no evacuation procedures because we're not at City Hall. Going to item number two, additions or deletions or changes to the agenda item orders. I am going to make a few changes to note for Sue and for everyone else. We're going to go to the announcements next because there's just some basic stuff that we have to go over, followed by public comment on non-agenda items. And then I'm going to move agenda item number 10, which are the minutes from April 5th up, before we get to agenda item number 5. So start with announcements. And if any of the DRB members or Marla or Delilah have an announcement, please let me know. I have two important announcements to make. The first is that this hearing is being recorded, will be made available for anyone to rewatch. I ask you to please mute your phone or your computer. If the ambient sound becomes too noisy, if you got the TV on the background, I'll ask Delilah Hall to, or she'll know just to mute all and then bring people back online. The visuals and the mute button is run by Delilah, not myself, and she did a fantastic job 2 weeks ago, and I know she'll do a great job again. Anyone who wishes to participate in the hearing, and not an applicant, but someone, a member of the public or member of a committee that wants to add a comment to any of the agenda items, you should sign the virtual sign-in sheet in the chat box. Anyone on the phone who would like to sign in can send an email to Marla Keene as well at mkeene@sburl.com, or to me at mcoda@sburl.com. Provide your contact information. It's important that you do that because then you are considered a participant. Should you want to obtain party status and appeal the decision made by the board, you can also, of course, submit comments in writing at any time. The second announcement that I'd like to make is that I received an email this afternoon from South Burlington City Manager Kevin Dorn, which I'm happy to make publicly available. The email conveys the sentiment expressed by the City Council last night about the access to information online. We're all sort of fumbling through this technology together and at different speeds. I understand that. I want to assure the City Council, my fellow DRB members, city staff, and the public that I share those concerns. It's of utmost importance to me that we conduct city business and be in compliance with open meeting law. Remote hearings, what we're doing now is how the Vermont legislature conducts their business. And they've given permission through emergency legislation for us to conduct ours in the same way. I've been assured by city staff that they are working incredibly hard to reach out to those interested parties, to those that may not be able to bridge that technology gap so easily. They've been reaching out and providing information, and I'm grateful for their extra work that they're doing, Paul, Marla, and Delilah, and Kevin. I think what we'll find is that with this new system, we'll open up new opportunities for people to participate in local government. And even when we can be together in City Hall, I suspect there'll be a demand that we keep doing it like this as well. So people that would normally be putting their kids to sleep or being away on business can participate online as well. This is not easy. This is slow. We are absolutely slowing this process down, and we have to because there is such a gap, technology gap, much slower than if we were meeting in person. And for those that have applications pending, I understand this, and I ask you to understand it as well. And I'm sure there's those out there that would wish we would just go away, that just shut it all down. Keep in mind, the Development Review Board is the place to ensure compliance with our land development regulations, to ensure that restrictions placed on private property by local government and the protections that the land development regulations afford to their neighbors are followed. We cannot allow the gears of government to grind to a halt. We're going to keep moving because a competent, responsive government is essential. So that's what we're doing here tonight, and that's what we'll continue to do until we can meet again at City Hall. Are there any other announcements from members of the Development Review Board or from city staff? Hearing none, I go to agenda item number 3, which are comments and questions from the public that are not related to any specific item on the agenda tonight. Now, if you have a comment, and I don't know if there's going to be 0, 1, or 20, but so I'll ask you to raise your hand by saying your name, or if you're online, and if you choose to, you can type it into the chat box and I'll recognize you. Once everyone that wishes to speak has indicated in one of those 2 ways, I'll call on you individually. And at that time, you'll have 3 minutes. And after the 3 minutes, you'll hear a friendly alarm encouraging you to wrap up. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, or if technology fails you, as it does fail us from time to time, we of course will gladly accept written comments that are unrelated to the agenda. And you can send those to Marla or to myself, mkeen@sbrill.com or mcoda@sbrill.com. So if there's anyone that would like a comment that's not related to the agenda, please say your name. Hearing none, I'm going to look at the chat box. And I see none. And one more chance, anyone that has a comment not related to the agenda? Not hearing any. I will move on to agenda item number 10. Remember, we're going out of order. Those are the minutes from April 5th. I asked my members of the Development Review Board if you have reviewed the minutes from April 5th. And if you have, I would like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from April 5th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by John Wilking. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Now moving on to agenda item number 5, which is the continued and preliminary plat and final application of SD 2002 of CEA Properties LLC to construct a 2-story office building of 7,200 square feet each on existing 3.1 acre lot, currently developed with a 7,200 square foot office building and a 1,000 square foot storage building at 10 Mansfield View Lane. Now the applicant has requested continuation for 1 month. Staff notes that the best time for us to do that is June 2nd, 2020. So I would make a motion that we continue preliminary final plat application SD 2002 of CEA Properties LLC for June 2nd, 2020. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Don. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we have continued SD 2002 for June 2nd. Moving on to agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 6 is sketch plan application SD 2012 of Heritage Aviation to amend a previously approved plan for an airport complex. This amendment consists of constructing a 24,674 square foot addition to the existing 17,600 square foot hangar, reconfiguring the adjacent parking area and related site improvements at 1130 Airport Drive. Who is here for the applicant?
Derek Reed from Krebs and
Hi,
Lansing.
Derek.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Derek. Good. Is there anyone else with you, Derek?
Yeah, I have Jeff Stout is on the line. He's the president and CEO of Heritage Aviation.
Great.
There's
Derek,
Hello.
Jeff, anyone else?
Dick
Larry
Eastman?
Lackey here representing the airport. I'm the Director of Engineering.
I'm sorry, can you say your name again?
Larry Lackey, Director of Engineering at the airport here.
Hey, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got Derek, Jeff, and Larry. This is a sketch plan, so there's no swearing in here. I'm just going to give a brief overview, Derek, Jeff, and Larry, for you and for anyone listening. Sketch plan is a high-level review, a discussion where the applicant receives feedback from the board on the major elements of a project before it is fully designed. During this meeting, we're going to provide oral guidance to you, which constitutes our determination that the application meets the purposes of the land development regulations. These comments are only to help guide you in a later application process that meets the LDR requirements and contributes to the goal of the comprehensive plan. This is not a formal hearing. There's no swearing in, and it does not result in a binding decision. If we choose to continue the meeting to a later date, that's maybe because questions that remain to be examined with the future date would be announced prior to concluding this item. But upon conclusion of the sketch plan meeting, you or any applicant of a sketch plan who wishes to move forward with the project will then have to submit a complete application. And this next level of review includes additional public notices and a formal public hearing. So we're just at a sketch plan. You've got a project that you've proposed. Please, either Derek, Jeff, or Larry, take the lead and talk to us about what you've got proposed before we go into the staff comments.
And Matt, David Roy identified himself in the chat for this as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, and David as well. So Derek, Jeff, Larry, David, amongst yourselves, if one of you would walk through the project for us before we get to the staff comments, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Derek. I also have Carolyn Orban on the line, who's a landscape architect.
Excellent.
David Roy is the architect. Chris Minadeo from Nagley and Chase, the project manager, is on the line. And Dick Eastman, project manager for Heritage Aviation, is also on the line. So I just wanted to introduce the team. So hopefully that's okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes. So the goal of the project is to expand the operations of the aircraft maintenance, ground support equipment maintenance facility that's existing at the south end of the property. The building expands over the existing parking lot mostly. To the west, we are formalizing the parking that's already there, eliminating some of the parking with sufficient parking to remain for the business's use. The stormwater for the site is we have very sandy soil, and we're fortunate to be able to treat it with underground stormwater treatment chambers. So the entire roof, both existing and the new and the redevelopment impervious, is all treated. We basically infiltrated the 10-year storm as far as the state's concerned. And we're using the roof runoff treatment of the existing that is not currently treated to meet the full treatment standards for public works. We have new underground utilities for water, sewer, storm. The building's large, so we have a second sewer service for the building. The building look and appearance, I'm going to turn over to David Roy to speak to that.
Could I interrupt you one bit? What I like to do in sketch plans is also describe, tell us a little bit about Heritage Aviation, just a quick snapshot and what goes on there and what you're using it for.
Okay. Jeff, do you want to speak to that for us?
Sure. Heritage Aviation is a fixed space operation and a Part 145 maintenance repair station. So we do jet maintenance. We do refueling on private jets. We have a private jet terminal. We do all the refueling at the commercial terminal and all the de-icing at the commercial terminal as well.
Great, thank you. Oops, sorry, continue.
So the building, one of the goals of the building expansion is to really make it a attractive from the street view. And I believe that the architect's done a really nice job in conjunction with the landscape architects to give it a nice look. And I'll let Dave Roy speak to that a little more.
Go ahead, David. You might be on mute.
No, it's showing that he's unmuted.
Can you guys hear me okay? I'm having trouble with my mic.
We got you now, David.
Okay, sorry about that. So to speak to the elevation of the building, the ridge of the building, we're gonna match the ridge of the building, which runs east-west, perpendicular to the runways, and carry that line west about 100 feet. And then there will be a one-story addition on the western facade of the building, which will have a different style. Well, it's meant to be office, administrative, conference rooms, avionics, and the public entry to the building. That will be a one-story addition with horizontal insulated metal panels, a different fenestration pattern, and a different colored building, a different color on the panels to differentiate it from the overall hangar massing. The rest of the building is going to match the profile and height of the existing hangar. And on the southern side, we're going to increase the height of what I'm calling the saddlebag on the south side of the building to accommodate the ground services equipment operations. In context, the majority of the building will carry through with the material finishes and the level of finish that's currently there, with the exception of the western wing, which has a higher level of finish and faces the road, the Airport Parkway Road.
So you're more than doubling in size, is that correct?
We are. We're adding 24,000 square feet to a 17,000 square foot building in rough numbers.
This is Dawn Philibert on the board. In looking at the elevation, it wasn't the west-facing elevation. It wasn't clear to me which one is the front door.
The one furthest to the left, actually, this is actually since changed. The door is going to be around the corner of that left entry.
Okay.
Dot is. So on that northern side will be the door entry leading to the parking, which is out off to the north there. This whole western side is just going to be lawn and greenscape right up against the building rather than any parking.
So the front entrance will not actually be facing Airport Drive or Parkway or whatever the road is called.
That's correct. There would be a window there, like the door is shown there, in the same configuration as the other adjacent windows. But the actual entry door would be around the corner on the north side. If you look at the other elevation, if you move over to the right of the page, the door would be just under that signage on the north side, to your right a little bit. Just a little bit further. Whoop. Yeah, right about there. The door entry is going to be right there to the right a little bit. In the one-story portion.
It's under the E of Heritage.
Yep.
In the north elevation.
There you go. Where the location of those two windows are under the Heritage sign, the right set of windows will be the door location. Yep, just to the
Okay,
right.
do you want to go through anything else before we step through the staff comments? Is there anything else you'd like to show us before we start that process?
No,
Matt,
you
can I ask a
can.
question?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead, Mark.
And maybe this is for David, maybe it's just for Marla, but what we're looking on the screen here, this is different than what we have in our packet for the front building elevation. Which one is sort of correct, I guess?
I believe
This,
your packet will be correct. I believe your packet has the door.
The packet has the door on the parking lot side, and then it has a lot more windows on the front of the building that go into like the conference room, the offices.
that is the correct one.
Okay, good. I like that one better because the one
Yeah.
on the screen right now, the front elevation looks almost like a side elevation. I know I agree with the differentiation of the horizontal versus the vertical and the little entrance canopy, but the one that's in our packet that we, is online has a whole series of almost full height windows in that front area. So
Yes, that is the correct one, and we developed it further. Yep.
good. Okay, thank you.
I apologize for that, guys. Derek sent that over to me and I put the wrong one in the packet. It looks like the right one got posted. Originally put the wrong one in the packet and the right one got posted to the website. But when I sent it over to Delilah, I sent her the wrong one. So what she's presenting from is a little bit outdated. If anybody on the board would like to see it, I have it on my screen, Delilah. If you wanted to flip control over to me, I can just pull it up really quickly. But if the board's
I think-
if you've all gotten
Give me a
it.
moment.
Marla, I think it's worth looking at. I've got it on the screen here, but it's dramatically different.
Okay.
Hold on. Wait, presenter. Okay, you've got the presentation.
Thank you. There we go.
Yep, that is the latest one.
And it's definitely different.
So the door is on the north facing side.
That's correct.
And then there's a bunch of doors or a bunch of windows along the what you described as the office area. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, there's conference and office spaces along there. Yep.
Okay. And then this portion of it is stepped back. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Is it possible to transition right to the landscape plan at this point? To have Carolyn speak to that, is that possible?
Delilah, can you take back control or something? How do I do that?
Let me
There it is.
hold
All right,
on.
I just gave it back.
Okay. All right. So then let me just go back to my screen. Do I have it back? Meet organizer. Okay. I don't know if I don't know that I have it back
Oh.
because I'm still looking if you have the presentation ability.
Make presenter. There we go. I guess I had to hit 2 buttons to give it back. There you go. I think you should be okay now.
So there's that share. And for landscaping, that's here in this packet as well? Is this the current? No. Carolyn, just let me know which one you want me to stop on.
Yeah, I can't really tell. It's too small.
I think it's the last page of the packet. L100.
Oh, one.
Yeah, I think it is the last one.
Is it this one?
Nope.
No.
No, keep going. It's all the way to the bottom.
That's my last page
Oh.
Oh, interesting.
for what's in with the comments and
Okay,
whatnot.
I think the one that you have, Delilah, I didn't update.
Okay.
I must have updated on my local and then just put it on the web
Okay.
and then called it a night.
Do you want me to give it back to you then?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hold on.
Sorry about this, guys. pace of online meetings is necessarily a little bit slower.
Make presenter. Okay, you are now presenter.
All right. So is this the one we want?
That looks like
Carolyn?
it. Yep, that's correct. Okay, so the existing streetscape along Airport Drive, where it fronts the Heritage Aviation property, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. Presently, there are about 25 mature trees, both deciduous and evergreen, but predominantly deciduous. So there's pretty good cover in this area. But as part of the Burlington Airport Master Plan that we'll be presenting next month, we envision a consistent streetscape where shade trees would run all along the entire length of Airport Drive in a somewhat consistent cadence to create a unified visual identity for the airport. So Heritage Aviation, in order to fulfill its landscape budget requirements, plans to install 7 shade trees along the streetscape contiguous to their property. And this will fill in the areas that are lacking trees at this time. As these begin to take shape and fill out those gaps, a natural barrier will be created, obscuring views onto the property. So you'll be able to see the building, but it'll be somewhat obscured. 2 of the existing planted parking islands are being maintained in their current condition with very full mature shade trees that are already filling the space. And then 2 additional islands will be constructed and planted with shade trees near the front of the building at the front entrance on the north side. At the main entrance to the building, again, the north side, an entry plaza has been created, and we hope to construct it of exposed aggregate concrete. A generously sized planting bed separates the loading dock area from the entry plaza and contains trees or a tree and some shrubs. And another planting bed is added to the front entry terrace along the west wall of the building for color and interest. The north face of the building, along the north face of the building, there's a concrete walk, and a planting bed separates it from the drive aisle. And in that planting bed, there's a new generator and transformer, and we're screening those with a series of shrubs, plantings, and ornamental grasses. Along the west side of the addition, we're showing a linear planting of ornamental grasses that should create a strong vertical accent and run between the windows that you saw in the elevation on the last drawing. And then at the southwest corner of the addition is a permeable concrete paver employee terrace. And there's also a planting bed within that terrace and a shade tree at the corner, and also some other shrubs. And likely there'll be a number of picnic benches placed in this area. That's about it for me.
Great. Is there anyone else from the applicant team that would like to talk before we step through staff comments? Yeah, hearing none. I'd like to go to staff comment number 1. This is regarding dimensional requirements and coverage. Historically, the board has allowed the airport to provide estimated coverage calculations as long as it is demonstrably well within the allowable maximums due to the overall size of the property. Staff recommends the board discuss whether they would like the applicant to provide existing and proposed building coverages. Marla or anyone else on the board, can you remind me what we've done with other airport properties with regards to coverage, other airport developments?
I can take that. This is Marla. The airport district has a maximum building coverage of 30% and a maximum lot coverage of 50%. The applicant has accurately calculated for stormwater purposes that the total lot coverage of the airport PUD is 34%. Knowing what we know and just looking at the aerial, I'm going to flip back to it really quickly. You can tell that there's no way, if this total PUD is 34% covered, that 30% of the total PUD is building. So historically, the board has said we don't need you to calculate building coverage knowing that the lot coverage is only 34%. Does that make sense?
Marla, I think that makes perfect sense. It's John. I think the airport at some point is going to come in for a master plan in the next year or so. And I think at that point, it's much more appropriate.
Yeah, that's a good point, John. Anyone else on the board have a comment regarding comment number 1? Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. Comment number 2, it's worth reviewing or rereading the paragraph before it, which is how do you measure roof height given the shape of the roof. The staff recommends that we discuss how they calculate height for the purpose of this application.
Matt, it's John. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm not quite sure how to measure it myself.
Well, Derek, is the pitch identical of the current roof identical to the new roof?
The height is approximately 8 inches higher. The new roof is. The pitch is a 112, and I believe that's what it is today.
Yeah, I went by today, and I didn't find any issue with what I saw. And so as long as it's relatively consistent with what you've got, I don't have an issue.
Well, the issue, of course, is if it's above, as I understand it, if it's above the maximum allowable height wave, you've got different setback requirements.
Well, it is a pitched roof, so it comes in underneath as a pitched roof. I know Marla's point was 1 in 12 is virtually not a pitched roof, but if what we've got out there is 1 in 12, it's a big enough building that it has significant height over the pitch.
John, this is Marla. I looked into it a little further after that point too, and agree with your assessment.
Okay. If there are no other comments, then I'll move on to item number 3, which is relationship to the proposed structures to the site. Staff recommends the board invite the applicant to describe the proposed aesthetics of the building as shown in the provided elevation drawing. Discuss whether the project appears to meet the requirements that structures be related harmoniously to themselves, the terrain into the existing buildings, and the roads in the vicinities that have a visual relationship to the proposed structures. The applicant is encouraged to use a combination of materials, architectural characteristics, landscaping buffers, screens, and visual interruptions to meet this requirement. So I would turn to the applicant on this one and ask to describe what you have planned for the aesthetics of the building and to assure us that you will meet those requirements in the LDRs.
Yes, so I've touched on that a little bit already. The
I'm
majority.
Sorry, just identify yourself for Sue, who's taking minutes.
David Roy, Weeman Lanphier Architects.
Great, thank you, David. Continue.
Thank you. Much of the building carries the same general aesthetic and massing of the existing building. It's extending 100 feet west of the existing western facade. And then, as we discussed before, we have a single-story addition on that west facade that accommodates more of a business occupancy with reception, office, administrative, and conference spaces, with more windows and fenestration looking out to the west. And we've eliminated the parking and drive lanes that are out there, and that all just becomes a grassy kind of western area with the landscaping that was described by Carolyn. And we're also going to have a different color horizontal insulated metal panel along that western portion of the building as well to differentiate it aesthetically from the general massing of the airport hangar.
David, it's John Wilking. I think you've improved the current building looks like a giant warehouse, which is effectively what it is. I think this is an improvement in many ways. However, you're bringing that mass right virtually out to the street, and so it's going to feel dramatically larger. I don't have a problem with it. I just make note of if it's really pushing out to the street. Second, just as a question, you have a passenger area building to the north of the building. Is that staying? Is any change happening with that?
You say a passenger area, I guess.
Well, the cul-de-sac, there's a little building to the north, right?
Yep.
What's that used for?
It's currently used for housing the crew that operates the DART helicopter.
Okay. The one and only time I've ever taken a private plane, I went through there. So I obviously don't know what it's used for at this point. So no changes with that, right?
No, none. No. Okay. I think just
Don?
for reference too, we should mention that the western facade is going to be about 130 feet from the street edge. And correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, but I think that's accurate.
Yes, so the 80, it's 80-foot setback from actually from the center line, plus the 50-foot setback for the district. So it's 130, approximately 132 from the center line of Airport Drive.
Okay, Don or Mark, Brian or Alyssa, any comments on the aesthetics of the building? What you'd like to see or what you don't like to see?
Yeah, can I make a comment, Matt?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and while I agree with John in terms of the mass of the building is coming out closer to the street, I would say that, you know, right now the face of the building, while set back, is across just basically a large asphalt parking lot. So that slab of warehouse with just a couple little windows and absolutely zero elevational detailing and disruption is being brought forward, but it's being brought forward with a one-story building, different materials, a lot higher quality of design, and a lot more landscaping. So I think that it's going to be mitigated. The encroachment towards the street is going to be mitigated by the one-story front building element, the increased design, and the increased landscaping.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that comment.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the board?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
John.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in the context this building is set at the airport, I think this is entirely appropriate.
Thank you, Brian. If nothing further, I'll move on to staff comment number 4. Staff recommends the board discuss whether this application warrants requiring utilities to be located underground. What utilities are planned for being above ground at this point? Is there an electrical connection or something? The applicant, could you answer that?
So all of the new utilities are, sorry, this is Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
Yep. All of the new utilities are proposed underground. I think that comment is for some lights that are around the perimeter of the project, some existing lights that we were leaving alone that have some overhead power to them. But all the new utilities will have underground, will be installed underground.
Is that accurate, Marla? Is that the assumption?
Yep. So if you, oh gosh, I guess I didn't write very much, but that was the intent. Sorry about that. I thought I wrote a lot more about that. Yep. So it's only, if I can flip to the plans, there's just a couple of utilities that are above ground today. Overhead lighting is connected with overhead wires. On occasion, the board has said, well, you're disturbing the whole, 90% of the site, therefore you should put everything underground. You can kind of see if I draw on it here, this is where the lines run above ground. And then,
So these are lights for the parking lot.
Right, and then this is their limit of disturbance line here. So the overhead wires are outside of the limit of disturbance, and the disturbance is all on this side of the line. So if the board felt like they wanted to expand the limited disturbance and have them put the utilities underground, you know, that's kind of how it would have to go.
Right. Well, of course, we always want the utilities underground where we can, but you know, I don't know if we can require it at this point. And obviously there's a cost element to it, but I'd like the applicant to comment on that request.
I guess it's the same thought. This is Derek again. We were trying to balance budget and we're hoping to leave it that part that we weren't touching as is. That was our hope.
I think Marla hit upon the key element is it's not like we're going to be cutting open any pavement to get to those light fixtures. So it would expand the limits of disturbance of the site pretty significantly to be able to cut into those, to put those utilities underground.
Yeah, and there would be a cost increase, I would assume. I'm not inclined to require it if we're not disturbing the ground where that line is. But anyone else on the board want to sound off on that?
Yeah, Matt, much as I'd love to see the overhead utilities go, I'm not inclined to push it, especially if it's outside of limits of disturbance and sort of adding to the project.
Hi, it's John Wilking. I'm looking at the Google Earth view of the parking lot. And the parking lot is pretty old, right? Yeah.
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 I mean, as the pavement looks like it might be 20 or 25 years old. I guess I would only suggest that I don't have a problem with it staying the way it is, but it would make sense when you cut that parking open, because you're going to have to probably in the next 5 years, that you might take it underground at that time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments, item number 5, staff recommends the board ask the applicant discuss their intended landscaping, what proportion of the required minimum landscaping budget they anticipate locating on site versus areas identified in the overall landscaping plan. And item number 6, we could do concurrently. Staff further recommends the board discuss what, if any, portion of the parking lot they will require the applicant to comply with the minimum interior landscaping and shade tree requirements. We talked about landscaping briefly with Carolyn. Let's return to it now. And this is the familiar concern or familiar discussion point when we talk about an individual project on the airport, how we move landscaping around to different parts of the airport property that is not maybe it's not with a direct nexus to the actual building, but if the applicant could address that staff concern.
Sure.
First.
Sorry.
I'm going to do something really fancy here. I'm going to trace the limit of disturbance on this screen. And then I'm going to switch to, I think I can do this. Yeah, now you can see the limit of disturbance on the landscape.
Okay.
Oh, cool. So I was just going to address the issue of the landscape budget.
Is this Carolyn?
I'm sorry. Yes, this is Carolyn.
Yeah, just for Sue to identify for the minutes. Thank you.
So there is a master plan in the works, as I said before, and we're going before the board, I believe, on May 5th. And in this case, it looks like the entire budget is going to be able to be spent on site. And that will include 7 trees that will go along the streetscape, which is part of the landscape master plan that we're proposing. So they wouldn't need to do any work on any other portions of the airport property. It would all remain right here, if that makes sense.
Carolyn, it's John Wilking. I'm looking at the Google Earth view. I don't know how you get that many trees in there. It's got to be a trick. There's a lot of There's a lot of landscaping across the face of this building to begin with, isn't there?
Yes, well, we use the Google Earth view as well, and I was out there looking at the trees, but we definitely have some gaps where we can fit them in, and just to create that cadence running along Airport Drive. And there'll be other elements that'll be introduced as well, but it won't be part of this application. So I think there is some room.
Well, I'm willing to move along. We've got time on this. We're going to be seeing the project before you probably to preliminary plat. So I don't think we've got a whole lot to talk about here tonight.
Right. But you did say that you'll be able to spend your entire landscaping budget on site versus there. Is that correct? I hear that correct?
That's
Carol?
correct. Yes.
Okay.
And it
That's
would
good.
also be going towards the master plan. So it's kind of works really well in this particular instance.
In the second
Mrs.
part of that
Marlowe.
comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I was
Marla.
just going to bring up the second part of the comment.
Well, the second part of the comment was regarding the parking lot and interior landscaping and shade tree requirements. I know it's in front of me here somewhere, Marla. The requirements for shade trees on parking lots.
Right, so it's
Let's say it
one
right here.
shade tree for every 5 parking spaces. Historically, the board has not required applicants to improve parking lots that are not disturbed. So that's kind of why I drew this pink limits of disturbance line. It's also required that parking lots have 10% interior landscaping if there's 28 or more parking spaces. So if, I don't know, it's always a question of where do you draw the limits of the parking area? Would it be, I can change to a different color here. Would it be, the limits of the drive aisle here? And is that kind of how you calculate where the 10% is, or would it be just the area that's being changed? I think that's important guidance for the applicant to have before they invest a lot of money in their next application.
Okay.
So what are we considering the parking lot as it pertains to interior parking lot landscaping and shade trees, I guess is the short way of phrasing the question.
Well, so one way to understand that is it's where the parking lot is being disturbed. And so 1 for 5 lots on where it's being disturbed, but not in the entire parking lot. And the other is to view it as the entire parking lot, even the areas that's undisturbed.
Yes.
What's the response from Carolyn about that, meeting those goals?
I don't, Derek, is that something that you guys have looked at from the civil side? Because we sort of went with your layout, and certainly we could could add more islands along the edge, but I don't know how the applicant would feel about that.
Yeah, we were looking at adding the island on each end and kind of covering the part that we were disturbing, assuming that the trees along the edge of the parking lot to the west provide the shade for the existing spaces to the west, adding 4 trees in the 2 islands north of the building. It felt like to us, we were providing shade tree that was applicable to this new project.
Okay. Any comments from the board regarding whether to require the entire parking lot or just the part that's being disturbed?
I don't feel strongly either way.
Matt, this is Mark here.
Go ahead, Mark.
While I recognize the limits of disturbance, this is a pretty major redevelopment of this site. And, while it is technically an addition to the original building, I would prefer to see the landscape island requirement met, since it's pretty much repurposing the whole site. I know it is just technically an addition, and and I don't think they're far off, but I'd like to see it, if possible, meeting the landscape island requirement.
Okay.
Carolyn,
Brian, Alyssa, John?
I guess I have a question for Carolyn. Are the trees on the northernmost drive lane into the site? Are those trees in those islands existing?
Yes, those are existing,
Okay.
and they're significantly large trees.
Well, yeah, I guess that's where I'm going. They provide, do they not, they must contribute to the shading coefficient of the parking.
There's no problem using existing trees to count towards your minimum shade tree requirements. It's just that on the overall calculation for the area that the board determines is the involved area, there should be 1 shade tree for every 5 parking spaces and 10% interior landscaping. And it
Okay.
doesn't matter if it's existing or new.
Okay.
So I think what Mark was saying is probably correct. You're probably close on, if not there already on the 10%, and I would say you're easily there on the shade trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was
Your
saying.
calculation,
I'm not-
the preliminary.
I'm
Yeah.
saying I don't want to discount it. I'd like to see the calculations, but I think you probably met it.
Okay, any other, we've done with staff comments. Any other comments from the board regarding landscaping or anything else about this sketch plan? Before I turn it over to the public?
John Wilking, I'd just like to say thank you. I'm pleased that Heritage is growing, and it's nice to see that in the community. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
This is
Okay,
Larry
if there's
Lack.
any, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I'd like or the airport would like to say thank you for continuing your process during this situation. As you all know, we've probably got about 8 or 9 projects ongoing with you with respect to construction, permitting, and design right now, which, once we get out of this will lead to lots of jobs for the next several coming years. So we really appreciate you continuing your process. This is obviously a private partnership job, but we have plenty of other improvement projects required by the FAA and the state as for the airport. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you, Larry. Any other comments from the applicant or the board before I ask members of the public if they have any comments regarding the sketch plan application? Hearing none, if there's anyone in the public that would like to speak, please either write into the chat box or simply say your name. Okay, if you were unable to say your name but wish to make a comment or don't choose to say it, you're more than welcome to send us an email, a fax, or a letter as well. But hearing none, I see no reason to continue this. The next time we'll see this application, presumably, will be at preliminary plat. Are there any other comments before I send you off? Hearing none, thank you all very much. We're going to now move to the next agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item is number 7. Sketch plan application SD 2013 of Bacon Street Properties LLC to consolidate an existing 0.4 acre lot and an existing 0.2 acre lot into one lot and construct a 2.5-story building at 12,000 square feet to be used as a bank, restaurant, and general office at 510 Shelburne Street. This is a sketch plan similar to my announcement at the last hearing, but I'll say it again for those that signed on late. The sketch plan is a high-level review and discussion where the applicant receives feedback from the board on the elements of the project before it's fully designed. We're here to provide oral guidance to the applicant, which constitutes our determination that the application meets the purposes of the land development regulations, and these comments are simply to guide the applicant to a process where they submit a preliminary plat and a formal application. This is not a formal hearing. It does not result in a binding decision. No vote will be taken. We're here to give feedback and hear from the public if they wish to, but to give feedback to the applicant. So who is here for the applicant?
Brian Cairns, owner of Champlain Oil Company, Bacon Street Properties.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good, Matt.
And Jen Desatel with Trudell Consulting Engineers, also known as
Hi.
TC. Hi.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Good.
Anyone else part of your team here?
No, not tonight.
No, this is it.
Okay, great. So Brian or Jen, tell us a little bit about what you've got proposed here.
Okay, I can take that. I first just want to note that before I forget that in the staff comments under owner, it lists Alliance Energy in the care of. Alliance Energy isn't a part of this application, so I just want to make that clear now.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Jen.
And then to describe the property, we're here tonight for the sketch plan application for the property at 510 Shelburne Road. The proposed project in front of the board tonight is to, at the sketch plan level, consider the combining of the 0.4 acre lot and the 0.2 acre lot into one lot so that we can redevelop the site into a new mixed-use commercial building with parking, patio area, and green space. As I think many of you know, the property was previously used as a gas station and auto repair center. The gas pumps have been removed as well as the canopy in the front of the building. And I think we'll get into that with our next submittal, but I think there's a really nice mixed use modern industrial style building that'll be built on this property. So I'm excited to see it redeveloped myself.
And the underground tanks are removed too as well, right, Jen?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. I think we'll move through some staff comments. Staff comment number 1. The applicant is proposing to decrease the front setback coverage on Shelburne Street, but not to meet the maximum allowable of 30%. The applicant is proposing to increase the front setback coverage on Bacon Street, where it is already higher than allowed. The applicant is proposing to decrease the overall coverage, but not to meet the maximum allowable of 70%. Site plan review standards 14.07E allows the board to grant waivers of certain standards where the limitations of a site may cause unusual hardship in complying with the standards, and a waiver therefore will not endanger public health, safety, or welfare, but in no case allows a waiver of total site coverage for new development. Staff considers this project as representing a new development. Since no elements of the previous approval are retained, therefore the applicant must comply with a maximum allowable lot coverage of 70%. Staff considers the board may allow the applicants to request for front setback coverage on Shelburne Street and on Bacon Street if they consider the limitations of the site cause unusual hardship in complying. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant that they must revise their design to not increase the degree of existing nonconformity. There's a lot there. Do you want to respond to that, Jen, at first, or would you have a clarifying question for staff's calculation on that?
I would like to jump in. I just want to start out by saying that we are currently, concurrently developing the preliminary site plan package as this application is in. So the site plan that we submitted a couple of months ago has changed slightly, and I think that some of the coverage requirements are only over by a little, and I'm not concerned about exceeding the overall coverage numbers. I would like some guidance or some feedback, though, on the Bacon Street side on both the setback and the possibility of increasing slightly increasing the impervious coverage. To start with the setback, it is discussed further down in the staff notes on page 3 of 7 in black text. About midway through the paragraph, it discusses the Bacon Street setback. We were going under the assumption that's discussed here that the site is within the urban design overlay district, and we think this is applicable to Bacon Street, which would allow us to have the 20-foot setback there.
So
this is Marla. I think maybe I could provide a little bit of background. There's a couple of different sort of ways of thinking about this that staff talked about. This project's in the urban design overlay district. The urban design overlay district is generally along Shelburne Road and Williston Road. It does have a thickness to it, and the board could potentially interpret it as applying to the first X feet of Bacon Street as well. So that is an option. And in that case, the setback from Bacon Street would be 20 feet. The other side of that coin is that if it's a facade in the urban design overlay district, it does come with certain requirements for entrances and glazing and that sort of thing. So, you'd have to think about, as the applicant, if you really were sure you wanted to make that request, and then the board would have to think about if, they agreed with that request, you'd have to meet those glazing requirements. And then the other option here is if you were to request coverage as a PUD. A PUD, has it's another two-sided coin. It has the advantage of allowing you to request waivers of setbacks and front setback coverage. In no case can you request waiver of the overall lot coverage, but it sounds like you're not worried about that. But the flip side of that is that the board can require or request other improvements to sort of offset the impact of those waivers. So you don't have to demonstrate hardship, but the board can ask you to make other changes to your site to sort of make up for the fact that you're not meeting the standard exactly. And then the third option is that, I guess I wrote that there's four options. But the last option would be if the site itself contains constraints that preclude these things from being met because the site's being fully redeveloped. Staff didn't really feel like that was a great option here.
And this is Jen. I think we would like to go with we interpreted the urban overlay district to include this property, including Bacon Street. So we'd like some guidance on whether or not that is an option to move forward with, because I think that's our number one choice.
I'm sorry, say that again, Jen. Your number one choice is what?
Is to use the urban design overlay district as applicable to Bacon Street, which would make the setback, which we are meeting. And I understand that there are design enhancements that would need to happen in that overlay district, but we're prepared to meet those requirements at this point. We're working on the building now.
Jen, it's John Wilking. This building reminds me a lot of Pizzagalli's building right down the street. And I have no problem with the 20-foot setback on the Bacon Street side. I think it looks good.
Thank you.
Brian, Mark, Melissa, Don, any comments about?
Yeah, Mark here.
No comments.
Yep. I'm okay with the 20-foot, and especially given the fact that it's an urban overlay district. I almost, not to say I want to see more paving or pervious, but I'd like to see it have some good connectivity to the street, the sidewalks, and not have it feel so isolated from the street, that is. So I'm okay with it sort of as is.
Especially with the change of use too,
Yes. Oh, exactly.
Yeah, I'm okay with the 20-foot setback as well.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Now, is Marla's comment number 2, that was encapsulated in that, right? Or is there something I'm missing in? Item number 3, standards pertaining to entries, glazing, height, setbacks, and landscaping. Based on the limited information provided, staff has no comments on these criteria, but recommends the board remind the applicants that they need to demonstrate compliance at the next stage of review. So Jen and Brian, that's your reminder. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does.
Great, thank you. Okay, staff comment number 4. Staff recommends the board confirm the applicant understands the traffic budget limitations are and required calculations. Does the applicant understand this?
This is Jen. Yes, we understand that, and we are in the process of finalizing the traffic memo, but I did submit it recently to Marla, and I think it might be included in your package, just to describe that allotment, and it shows that we are in fact under the budget for allowable trips.
Yep, so Jen sent that over. Delilah, you have it in supplemental if you wanted to pull that up. I think the conclusion was that you were under by, kind of a frog's hair. So that's just something to keep an eye on, that, it is really close.
Under by what?
Frog's hair? By the skin of your teeth?
Got it.
All right. So here's the traffic memo.
Yeah, the last page sort of had the conclusion when I skimmed through it earlier. And I
This is
think it
Jen.
was-
The existing trips under the gas station prior use were 112, and our proposed trips are 105. So,
and did you use for the gas station? Did you use gas station? It was never a convenience store. It was just a gas station. Did it have a service component to it?
Yes, it did.
right.
Okay. So we'll probably, I guess, since we got this a little bit late, that's just something that staff will take a look at and provide some feedback on, just to make sure that that's consistent with the way the city's approached gas station calculations in the past, just because there's so many categories that are available in the IC.
Right. We did consult our in-house traffic guru, and we believe that is the right category to use, gasoline/service station.
Okay. Moving on to comment number 5, PUD subdivision standards. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant whether they intend to apply as a planned unit development. Jen?
This is Jen. I don't, at this time, we're not asking to be considered a planned unit development. We do understand that allows for some flexibility. I'm not sure that we need it. So I think we will note that, and we'll be prepared with some additional information when we submit our preliminary site plan.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Comment number 6, as access is basically uncontrolled across the site under existing conditions, staff considers that the proposed access improvements represent the most significant alteration to how this property will interact with adjoining properties. It will likely result in improved predictability for motorists and pedestrians. Staff recommends the board invite the applicant to describe site circulation under proposed conditions, and recommends the board provide robust feedback on the proposed circulation at this early stage of review. So maybe we can take a look at the site map, and Jen or Brian can walk us through how you consider traffic flow.
This is Brian, Matt. I'll speak to this. So we feel like obviously in the current site there's 2 existing curb cuts and with egress, ingress, and we've looked at the site when we were trying to design this, and we thought that that obviously we're closing 2 curb cuts and then going for an ingress only slip lane from Shelburne Road going north into the site. Obviously there's access through the Farrell Street. However, you'd have to cross the Walgreens parking lot to enter the rear of the property. And then obviously there's access through Bacon Street. So those are really the points of enter and exit from the site.
Well, Bacon Street is both egress and ingress, is that right?
It will be, yes.
Yeah.
And this is Jen. I think on page 3 of the traffic memo, Delilah, if that's not too much trouble to go back to, there's a nice exhibit that shows what the existing conditions are.
We have them in our package as well.
Right. So that that aerial shows that basically there's a gigantic wide open curb cut along all of Bacon Street, and then there's the 2 very wide access points on Shelburne Road. So we're proposing to restrict the Bacon Street to just one, standard 24-foot wide entrance, and then just a right-in only slip lane on Shelburne Road, and that would be the only access point on Shelburne Road.
It has always
So we do feel
free for all, so that's good.
Yeah. Does Bacon Street just have that one? Does it have a sidewalk on the north side, or is there a sidewalk on the other side? It's hard to see in that picture.
I'm gonna hop to the aerial to make sure that or the street view. To double check.
I think in this picture here, it's just open.
Right, it's open on our side of the street, but to the north, next to the City Lights building, there is a sidewalk directly adjacent to the pavement.
So if people were coming from the north, going south, walking, they wouldn't go on Bacon Street. They would cross the street there and enter your building, your business, after they cross Bacon Street, presumably.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah.
because that's the front entrance will be right on Shelburne Road, not on Bacon Street.
Yeah, this is Brian, Matt. There will be the entrances for the retail will be both the front of the building on the Shelburne Road side, as well as the east side of the building, which is in the parking lot side. So there'll be two ways to get into both retail locations.
That's it.
So Brian, you're saying that you can go from Walgreens into the parking lot without crossing out of the property?
There'll be exactly. There'll be a enter and exit, pass through, if you will, from that Walgreens in the rear of the property, Walgreens, to that back parking lot, if you will.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other comments about circulation from the board?
Vastly improved.
Okay, moving on to page 6, top of page 6. Staff recommends the applicant be directed to work with the City of Burlington, Department of Public Works, and South Burlington Planning and Zoning staff to address the comments above, which I just skipped over. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant the need to obtain preliminary water and wastewater allocation prior to the next stage of review. Number 7 is easy. Number 6, referring back to stormwater.
This is Jen. We definitely understand those requirements, and we will be working with both the City of Burlington and South Burlington Public Works departments and Planning and Zoning staff on those steps 6 and 7.
So we look forward to seeing that at the next stage of review. Item number 8, relationship to structures and site to adjoining area. Staff considers the application does not contain sufficient information to evaluate the structure's relationship to existing buildings and roads in the vicinity, and recommends the board invite the applicant to describe their vision for the building, including the patio area to the front. Remind the applicant they'll be required to demonstrate compliance with this criteria at the next stage of review. So Jen or Brian, you want to take it away and describe what you think you're going to build there, what you'd like to build there?
Yes, this is Brian. I can take that, Matt. So I envisioned like it says on the minute or the initial thing, it says 2.5 story building. We're going to do a brick building with stone facade. I foresee large windows for the retail, as well as the second and third floor offices. So it's going to be a lot of glass, a lot of brick and stone implemented into the design. And again, when I say 2.5 stories, it will show, there'll be a patio, a front patio on that western side. So from the parking lot, you'll see it look like a 3-story building. From the other side, you'll see that there'll be a patio. So that third floor is essentially half that floor. But I think it's going to be a glass, industrial, modern, kind of a factory-looking building with the windows, big windows. and we're pretty excited. We're in the midst of design, and we should be good to go by the next, or show some type of rendering by the next meeting.
Great. Yeah, we want to see that.
Do
Any
you
questions
have,
for the?
Mrs. Khan, do you have a retail occupant yet?
Yes, I'll talk. I'm sorry, I didn't touch on that. I've had some interest for retail. The two retail tenants, which would be the ground floor, and we've had some discussions, negotiations. I have some interest. I really don't want to talk names at this point, but you know, restaurant bank is definitely two of interested parties, and then obviously the second and third floor would be an office situation.
Good, thanks.
Matt, Mark here. Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
One thing I just want to, I heard some verbiage in there in terms of the sort of design characteristics of it, where you sort of talked about getting sort of modern and funky and contemporary. I just want to be wary that you sort of make sure you sort of keep it sort of somewhat traditional, because it is, you know, Shelburne Road, it is, you know, sort of the kind of, we call it gateway into South Burlington. And we had this issue down on the corner of Proctor on that new sort of extended stay residence building. Their first rounds were very, very modern, you know, a lot of, you know, metal and, you know, and, you know, they got some pushback from the board on that. So that's just kind of my comments. So when we do see the designs of it, it doesn't go a little too off kilter, like just like the first rounds of designs we saw it on the, well, it's the Trader Joe building, but it was just presented as a retail building.
And this is Brian, just to comment back. I might have a little bit misspoke. There might be some modern characteristics within the building, but predominantly it's going to be, like I said, brick and stone,
Okay.
you know, large glass windows. So we're going to definitely keep it to, you know, like traditional as Shelburne Road is currently.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments before we move on to the next? Comment number 9, staff recommends the board provide feedback on whether the project will require screening to the east. Okay, can we look at the map again and see the east? Because we're screening between Walgreens and, is that what we mean by east? Is that what we mean by east?
I think it's Bacon Street Lofts, probably.
Or is it Bacon? Wait, I'm lost. North is.
This is Jen. Yes, I think it's the residential building that sits behind the parking lot, right there where the cursor is hovering over the screen. There's some existing mature trees there that are planted very close to the property line, which may serve as the screening we need between the different uses of residential and commercial. And of
Okay,
course,
so
we'll provide a.
Jen has, it's John Wilking. Has Eric Farrell seen this?
Eric, this is Brian. Eric has, I've showed him the site plan. He was inquiring what we were doing, but it was very early on in the process, maybe a few months ago. But he did see the preliminary site plan, which hadn't changed too much from what this is.
Yep. It's hard to tell from that what screening is there, but maybe.
This is Jen. We'll definitely come back. We'll definitely come back in with, you know, a full landscape plan that shows existing and proposed.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Item number 10, staff notes that the project will be required to provide 10% interior parking lot landscaping, which appears to be met. The applicant should be directed to provide these calculations as well as demonstration of the required number of shade trees, snow storage, and other requirements of 13.06 of our land development regulations as part of the next stage of review. Is that acceptable, Jen?
This is Jen. Yes, it is.
Great. Then last comment, item number 11, exterior lighting. 1307B2 prohibits excessive spillover of light to nearby properties. Staff recommends the board remind the applicant of the need to provide a photometric drawing and lighting cut sheets at the next stage of review. That was your reminder. Any questions about any of that?
This is Jen.
Any other
No,
questions? Anything else from the applicant or from the board regarding this project before I ask if there's anyone in the public that would like to comment?
Brian, Jen, it's John Wilking again. Nice infill project. I like this one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would concur with John on that. I think it's a nice infill project. It's especially if you can get sort of like a restaurant use, given the proximity to Farrell Street and Eastwood and Bacon Street. You know, obviously this is just the conceptual sketch plan, but there've been obviously some thought put into it. I'm interested to see the next round of it with the design of the building and more further developed site design and landscaping.
Yeah, I agree too.
Great, thank you. If there are no other comments, I would invite the members of the public to offer their voices. You can do so by either stating your name, and then I'll call on you in turn, or by writing in the chat box. Is there anyone that would like to offer a public comment regarding this sketch plan? Okay, hearing none and seeing no reason to continue, then I will say goodbye to Jen and to Brian, and look forward to seeing you next time.
This is
thank you.
Marla. I'm going to interrupt quickly. I did get some interest from the public just asking to see the plans. Nothing, positive or negative. It was just, can you please send them to me? So consistent with what we've done on other sketch plan hearings in this time of digital meetings, if I get any public comments in the next couple of weeks, I'll send them over to the applicant and the board. And then if it's, some time has elapsed, I'll save them for the next stage of review.
Great. Thank you, Marla. And to reiterate, as I said in the last project, if you weren't able to raise your hand digitally or to speak out, or you chose not to, but wish to make a comment, you can feel free to submit that in writing, and we'll of course read it. But seeing no other comments at this time and no other comments from the board, thank you. That is the end of agenda item number 7. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jen. We're now going to move on. See ya. We're now going to move on to item number 8 and 9, and I am recusing myself from 8 and 9, and I believe, Brian, are you recused from 8 and 9 as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'm going to say good night, and I hand it over to my friend Mark, who's going to take over chair duties.
Good night, Matt.
Thanks,
I
Brian.
will do my best in this digital age, and everyone's going to be patient with me, correct?
No comment.
All right, so it is my understanding that, and Marla, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we're going to hear both 8 and 9 together tonight?
I think that's the best way to go.
Okay. Any
So if
objections
you want to go
from the
ahead and
applicant?
open both.
Yep.
And then these are both continued. So unless there's new folks providing testimony on behalf of the applicant, they do not need to be sworn in again. So I would just check to see who's representing the applicant and open both hearings. Maybe the other.
So, this is Mark Baer. I will be taking over as very temporary chair of the board for agenda items number 8 and 9. That's now agenda number 8 is continued final plat application SD 1931 at RL Valley Inc. to consolidate 2 lots of 0.36 acres and 0.59 acres into 1 lot for the purpose of constructing an expanded service station and retail sales and restaurant building, 793 and 907 Shelburne Road, and agenda item number 9, which is continued site plan application SP 1939 of RL Valley Inc. to demolish the existing structure at 907 Shelburne Road and a portion of an existing service station at 793 Shelburne Road and construct an expanded service station with 2 additional fueling positions for a total of 10 and an associated 4,265 square foot retail sales and restaurant building 793 and 907 Shelburne Road. I'm going to ask if anyone from the applicant is new or if everyone previously has been sworn in.
Chris Gallup. I think we've all been sworn in already.
Okay. Anyone else that needs to provide testimony tonight that has not previously been sworn in? Okay, hearing none, we will continue with the 2 agenda items.
For the purpose of the minutes, do you want to say who was there from the
Sure.
team too?
Yeah, if everyone that was previously sworn in can just announce themselves, and maybe even in the chat window if you have access to it, just put your names in.
Skip Valley.
Okay, I've skipped Valley.
Chris Gallupo is CEA.
Okay. Okay, I see Jeremy Owens, Corey Mack, Chris Gallupo, and Andres Terizo.
John Anderson.
John Anderson. Okay, Skip Valley. I thought I saw Skip Hockner on the attendee list.
That is correct. Skip Hockner is on there. I'll text him to turn the mute on. I think he might have it off.
But I see he's on the call. Okay. All right. So, Marlo, how do you recommend we do this with the subdivision and site plan? The bulk of it is in the site plan application, correct?
Yep. I guess I would probably start with the subdivision. The only real substantive, I'm just opening it on my own screen so I can scroll through it really quickly.
I don't see any
comment there is don't close it until the sketch plan, until the site plan is closed.
Okay, so in reviewing SD 1931 final plat application for 793-907 Shelburne Road, I don't see any staff comments to be discussed. So unless we have anyone on the board, in the applicant, or in the audience, we will set that aside and move on to agenda item number 9, which is the site plan application, SB 1939. Okay, so this is site plan application SC 1939 of 793-907 Shelburne Road. It's continued from previous hearings for the purposes of addressing and reviewing further comments that the board had. So if we want to just go through the staff comments item in red. Let me just pull it up on the other side of the screen. Okay. All right. So bottom of page 1. Zoning district conventional requirements sketch plan application to consolidate the 2 lots. The single lot was heard on March 4th, and the final plat application will be heard concurrently. Staff continues to recommend the board review this application but not close the hearing until the final plat hearing on the proposed subdivision is closed. Decision on the subdivision will inform whether this project meets certain standards, including dimensional standards. Okay, so that's just sort of a statement on the hearing. Okay, moving on to item number 2 at the top of page 3. The applicant's statement that VTrans has approved the project is incorrect. Staff recommends the board not allow their evaluation of the proposed driveway configuration to be influenced by the issuance of an LOA. Marla, do you want to just give us a quick summary of that statement? Or explanation, I guess.
Staff comment number 2. Yep. So there was some discussion of VTrans having issued a letter of intent. So the project was therefore approved by VTrans. VTrans has stated very clearly that they require local approval before they'll issue a permit. So staff just wanted to emphasize that the issuance of a letter of intent should not necessarily mean that the board is obligated to accept the driveway configuration as proposed. I don't think necessarily anything we need to discuss. I just wanted to make it clear that acceptance by VTrans does not require acceptance by the local review board.
Okay. All right. Okay, does the applicant have any comment on that, or is that just understood at this point?
Understood. We had actually talked about that last meeting, that is the process that we go through, so we have no problems with that.
Okay. All right. Okay, so then moving on, staff comment number 3. While the northern curb cut is proposed to be a right in and right out only, staff considers the only impediment to left turns onto the site from Route 7 is the striped median and recommends the board ask the applicant to describe additional measures which can be added to provide additional visual and physical impediments to left turns into the site. Can you comment on that? Because I know that is something that we're concerned about, is the safety of traffic flow, especially given its proximity to the 189 intersection.
Yeah, so this is Chris Gallipo, and it might actually be helpful if we went back to the staff comments. But we, as we indicated before, we have met with VTrans. They did issue the LOI, and Marla, since the last meeting, had actually reached out to Jim Clancy, and Jim actually provided that memo, which we only found out about in the staff report. But I think if you look through that, the state actually doesn't have an issue with the curb cuts or the left turn. And then Corey Mack with RSG is also on the phone, that talks about the traffic impact study and the accidents. And, you know, between RSG and the state of Vermont, no one has issues with the curb cuts as currently proposed. But I'll let Corey chime in on that as well.
Chris, if I can just, before you guys switch over to Corey, this is Marla, just redirect a little bit. We're talking about the northern curb cut, and you have stated that the northern curb cut, because of the striping in the median, is a right in, right out only. The staff comment is that striping is sort of a low impact way to suggest one should not turn left. And are there any additional measures that you could include on your site, signage, maybe angled curb, to help support what you've already stated to be true?
So we did have to add a no left turn sign at that location per VTrans, but that was the only thing that VTrans asked us. And again, Corey, do you have any input on that?
Sure. So at that location in particular, there's not really much that we could do on the roadway. So like a median is the best way to keep people from driving, you know, across the median, like a raised element. And the Agency of Transportation really won't allow that in their right of way there. So then we're kind of left with what we can do on the site. And, you know, the one thing that I'd really try to avoid doing is, you know, if somebody does try to turn left, have to have them either redirect or hesitate or, you know, turn back right. So I wouldn't really want to put like any types of curbs or anything in there that like they don't recognize right away that they can't drive over, because then they're sort of in the opposite lanes already. So, you know, I would say that like signs would be the best way, but I mean, again, that's a really challenging thing to do from across the street, trying to let people know that they can't turn left without using the existing pavement markings that are there. So that's what the hatched median really does, is tell people that they can't be there. You know, you'd need sort of a sign facing the entrance to say like, do not enter, but that only applies to people coming from the north. That would be a very challenging thing to get people to understand. So that's sort of like, I would hesitate to suggest using some sort of angled curb there. I believe that the truck turning movement needed that full width anyway. And any type of like mountable curb or anything, like, you know, there may be people who decide that they can turn left in there regardless of what we do, and I'd hate for them to like have to redirect, potentially causing an unsafe situation while after they've already committed to that turn. if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. This is Mark here again. One thing I'd like to say is if it's a striped median, which basically says you're not supposed to turn left, I think at a minimum, I personally would want to see at least signage saying no left turn out of this, entrance or, egress, right turn only. Because, and you're going to find people that are going to do it regardless. But I think with enough signage and with enough people, enough usage of it, people will get used to, using the southernmost curb cut for left turns, or going through, the Hannaford's over in City Park, or to the further traffic light down further to the south. I think it's just a learned behavior, and by not putting any signage up is just encouraging people to go if they can.
So
Mark,
all right, this is Chris Gallup. I don't know if you can hear me. There was a little bit of a delay, but I think you said that you would like to see signage there, and we are actually adding a no left-hand turn sign. That was actually a requirement from the state. So right at the right when you pull out, on the west side of the sidewalk, there is a no left-hand turn sign that is proposed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. There you go. Yep.
This is Corey. Were you hoping to have like a no northbound left turn entrance sign, some sort of sign to keep that from happening? Is that the concern?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I guess, obviously we'd like to see whatever we can do on the site to prevent people from turning left out of the site from the northernmost curb cut. And I guess, I'm not sure, Marla, did you have another thought, or was there more thoughts in terms of staff's comments to the effect of affecting curbing or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that we were thinking along the lines of curbing. I'm the wrong kind of engineer for curbing layout in terms of traffic control. I can lay out a curb for parking like nobody's business, but when it comes to traffic control, I tend to defer to Corey on this.
Well,
so if there's no additional discussion, we can probably move on to comment number 4, which is, I think what Chris started to get to at the beginning, which is talking about the southern curb cut. So, staff concurs that the elements of the project do represent some safety improvements. There is a left turn allowed out of the southern driveway. It seems like there's a lot of great opportunities that are safer to go northbound from this property by leaving out the rear of the site and either turning right towards Queen City Park or turning left towards the Hannaford driveway, which is now active, and that signal is being redone as part of a VTrans project right now. And that's anticipated to be operational by October, I want to say. So, would the board want the applicant to make the southern driveway right in, right out? The reasons for that is it would reduce pedestrian crossing width and then limit vehicle movements opposing the flow of traffic on the state highway. It would also reduce front setback coverage, potentially by reducing front setback coverage, enhance the appearance of the project.
Yeah, Marla, I mean, I would agree with you on that. And, there's several sites on Shelburne Road where you do have left out, especially in, across this busy section. But those sites also don't have the benefit of the connection to the Hannaford's parking lot, which gives you the options for safer, more managed northbound traffic. The left turn onto Shelburne Road. And I think in looking at the truck turning radiuses, you don't need that wide of a curb cut if I'm correct, and I would ask the applicant to comment on that, because I thought that width of curb cut really wasn't needed for the traffic turning radius movement diagram that I'd seen. Can we pull up the truck turning diagram? I know I saw it in the application.
Yes, hold on a moment.
Lilith, page 82 of the packet.
Okay.
But the last page.
Oh, no. Really?
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, 32. 32.
Okay.
Wait, I can't see very well.
Yep, that's it.
There we go. Okay.
So, I mean, as I look at, I can see the issue of the northernmost curb cut for traffic flow and truck turning radius needing that amount of width, and that width isn't overly wide. But, you know, the curb cut to the south seems overly wide for what you actually need it for. And I wonder if the applicant can comment on that.
So it's Chris Gallipo in civil engineering.
Yes.
The curb cut, I don't know, can you zoom in on the turning movements a little bit?
Doing it now, hold on.
So, I mean, essentially, when you look at the curb cuts, if there's a car, essentially the turning movements that we're showing is one vehicle either coming in or coming out. We're showing both a fire truck coming in and then as well as the fueling truck leaving. But when you look at different vehicles coming and going, and you've got one vehicle either pulling in or one vehicle pulling out, that curb cut width is a standard approved curb cut, which VTrans allows. Ari and I and RL Valley met with the state to review both curb cuts because obviously under the existing conditions, there's one huge curb cut and then the southern curb cut for the Maple Leaf. And so when we reduced it and look at the turning movements, this is the width that we felt was the safest to get people in and out. The last thing you want too is for it to be tight and somebody to pull in or pull out and stop in traffic because it's a narrow, tight curb cut. So we have thought about it. We have, looked at the turning movements, and that width is really what we need for the different vehicles. And it's not just the tractor trailer truck. There's also times, when there's delivery trucks, there's box trucks. There's even, someone with a 3/4 ton pickup truck pulling a boat, and those turning movements take up a fair amount of space. And that curb cut is kind of what we feel is the safest. I don't know, Corey, if you want to weigh in on that too, but that width is pretty standard for VTrans.
No, I would say that I would agree with all that. I think that there's, like Chris was saying, this is Corey Mack from RSG again. That there are a variety of design vehicles that would be going through this, especially and not really shown here, like a left turning from Shelburne Road northbound left turning vehicle that's headed towards like the gas pumps or something like that. They're going to need to like turn left and then turn right to go along the edge of the building inside and interior of the lot. And so like that requires a fair bit of maneuvering space for them to be able to pull that maneuver off. And our traffic impact study that was referenced earlier and was sort of discussed that Jim Clancy from VTrans provided a comment on. Our traffic impact study reviewed the crashes that were occurring at the southern driveway or at the location of where it's proposed. And if there were any safety concerns here, and there were none that were highlighted in this location. It is a high crash segment of roadway, but at this particular location, there was really no crash history to speak of outside of rear end crashes that you'd expect at the traffic signals. So from the Hannaford Drive signal to the south, I'm sorry, that is just the Burlington Plaza traffic signal, or the Queen City Park Road traffic signal to the north. Both of those signals have a high degree of rear end crashes, and that's just a factor of the amount of traffic on the roadway. But none of these crashes have anything to do with left turning movements. And, you know, keep in mind that there is an operating 8-pump gas station right there and one on the opposite side of the street. So there's a lot of left turning traffic already occurring right here, but no real history of left turning related crashes.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the board have anything to offer on this?
No, I think historically we're not seeing a lot of here. It's John Wilking.
Okay. Okay. All right, let's move on to any other comments on item number 4? All right, let's move on to staff comment number 5, which relates to the traffic overlay district. Staff considers the board to require a sidewalk along this connection and require that the site plan approval for completion of the connection to the southern site must be obtained prior to zoning permit approval for this project. So this is about the connection to the parcel to the south.
Right. This is Marla. I apologize for this, guys. I'm on the applicant team. When I was writing this, I realized that I was reading through the overlay district and Appendix B, and I realized that connections are required to include pedestrian connections as well. So that's what this comment was getting at. It's something you should have brought up sooner, and I apologize for not mentioning it before, but that southern connection is required in the LDRs to have a sidewalk part of it too.
So the southern connection, you mean the southern connection that's connecting to the
tire warehouse.
Tire warehouse, which right now is just a curb cut with no sidewalk on either side of it.
Right.
Okay. And so at this point, this is the first time this is being brought up to the applicant?
Yeah, I apologize for that. I missed it until I got to this review.
And it's a requirement in the LDRs?
Yeah.
Okay, so would the applicant like to comment on how they would meet that reg?
This is Chris Gallipo. Can Marla just give some clarity as to where that sidewalk, does it just terminate at the property line, or where would that go on the tire warehouse parcel?
Marla, draw.
Oh, okay. So I'm just looking for, I think I excerpted the exact language in the staff comments, I think. Sidewalk must include a pedestrian path. The LDR state that the connection must also include a pedestrian path between buildings on both parcels. So, you know, we're not looking for you to add necessarily, you know, a sidewalk beyond what you would already be doing in a normal parking lot situation. It's understood that, you know, sometimes one has to walk across a parking spot, but you should be demonstrating that there is a safe pedestrian route, and whether that's through striping or, you know, a kind of a cut or other measures in the curved area, that connection should be a safe and viable connection for pedestrians as well as vehicles to the south. So it's up to you how you want to do that, but you can take a look at Appendix B. I mean, really, in the staff comments, I excerpted the whole thing. There's not a lot more to not a lot more to chew on, but it is in there, and you're welcome to take a look.
Marla, would it be considered that the path along the roadway, like the existing sidewalk system, would be the safest path?
I did think about that. And if the board is allowing connection to the south count as vehicle trip credits, then in that connection to the east to Shelburne Road is just as viable for vehicles as the one to the south, then they shouldn't give extra credit to the sidewalk on Shelburne Road and not require the, does that make sense? I'm sorry, I'm not phrasing it well, but basically if you're going to get credit for a vehicle connection, the connection does specify that it has to allow pedestrians as well. And since you could drive out to Shelburne Road or drive south.
I understand that, but I feel like the difference there is that it's the same distance for pedestrians, except one, like, so it's the same directness. It's just one is not directly through a parking lot. So I just would think that the safest path would be along the road on the sidewalk. And it's a little different with the vehicles because that vehicle is now avoiding driving along Shelburne Road. Whereas the pedestrian was never going to be impacting the Shelburne Road roadway network. So I think that there should be it should be considered a little differently. I mean, if the applicant, I'm kind of speaking out of turn here, so I apologize.
You know, I think that makes some sense. And if you're a pedestrian at the tire place, aren't you most likely to go to Shelburne Road to that sidewalk to go north anyways? We're talking about pedestrian traffic from the tire place going north.
Well, we're talking about pedestrian connectivity between adjacent uses. So the idea is of getting credit for this connection is to increase synergy between the sites. So, you know, say you're getting your tires changed and you want to go have something to eat in the restaurant while you're waiting.
Would the LDR, the trip credit, so this is regarding the trip credits, the use of the trip credits. That seems to pertain mostly to vehicle trips, so that the vehicle trips aren't going along Shelburne Road. I feel like it seems to me that it would be a little different in that sense. And as the pedestrian connectivity is kind of, you know, the environment is certainly enhanced as this, like the green island is being constructed. There's going to be landscaping. There's the vehicle exposure will be much less since you're not being kind of funneled from, you know, perhaps the direct entrance of the tire warehouse into the parking lot of the Maple Fields. You'll instead be kind of directed along the pedestrian path, which has amenities, and then directed across like the marked crossing to the front of the building that way. So I feel like it's...
Is it fair to interpret your questions here to mean that you think it would be really challenging or not desirable to include a pedestrian connection?
I don't think it would be the best path. I don't think we'd want to be routing pedestrians through the parking lot if there's a nice path already existing right next to it, you know, 40 feet out of the way. You know, if people are getting their tires changed and wanting to go get a quick bite to eat at the convenience store there while they're waiting, they'll probably still walk to the straightest line possible. But I don't know if there's really, I would try not to encourage that, I guess, from my perspective. This is Corey, by the way. I'm sorry for whoever's taking notes and I'm not introducing myself.
I mean, Marla, we're happy to put a sidewalk heading east to west through that green
But this
space.
isn't my call. This is the board's call. I'm just laying out the facts.
Yeah, but I think that, but then you consume green space where we're kind of at the max as we are. I mean, but that sidewalk would encourage people coming through the entrance to take a right and then go up to Shelburne Road, which, as Corey points out, is probably the best route to take.
So Marla, is basically, it sounds like it's an LDR regulation that requires either some sort of striped access between the parking lot, restaurant, down to the new proposed future connection, but it has to, the future connection actually has to have some sort of paved sidewalk. It doesn't have to go east-west back up to the sidewalk on Shelburne Road, but if you just have that little strip between the access road and the property to the south, you then have to have some sort of striped path across the parking lot to the restaurant. Is that what I'm understanding?
Right, and I'm actually looking for the exact language and struggling a little bit to find it, but it says that, you know, one of the things is that if there's a connection to an adjacent parcel, that connection has to, oh, here it is. The connection must also include blah, blah, blah. So I'm on, if anybody has their LDRs in front of them, I am on page 322. It says the connection must also include a pedestrian path between the buildings on both parcels. The pedestrian path can be a separate path or a striped walkway along the traffic lanes. These connections must be practicable all year long. It cannot become storage areas for snow. If the connection consists of a pedestrian path only, the traffic budget credit shall be 10 trips. For above connections, a reciprocal easement agreement must be established, which we've already talked about. Blah, blah, blah. So this is all in the section about connection to adjacent parcel and about how.
If I may, this is Corey from RSG. It says the pedestrian path can be a separate path or a striped walkway along the traffic lanes. Is that not exactly what we have? Like it's a separate path, it's a sidewalk along the travel lanes, traffic lanes.
So Marla, I hear what Corey's saying, and I would actually tend to agree with him in reading the regulations. If a connection is made, you need to provide a pedestrian path, but it doesn't say it has to be right at the connection, does it? Because the sidewalk along Shelburne Road is connecting the two properties north and south.
Right, I agree with that. And when I wrote it, I was thinking about that, and I said, well, but you can also drive on Shelburne Road. So if we're giving credit for, if we're saying that the connection north-south for cars counts, shouldn't it? I don't know. I thought about that and wasn't sure, and I'm interested in what the board has to say.
Well, I would like to hear what the board has to say, because I tend to hear what Corey's saying and say they are providing a pedestrian path connecting the two sites with the sidewalk that runs north-south along Shelburne Road. But I also hear that, this LDR is a must, not a should. So if there is something that does say it has to be at the connection between the two properties, then that's a different subject. How does the rest of the board feel?
This is Dawn. It seems to me if I were having my tires changed, I would expect to go out to the sidewalk, walk up, and then turn into the convenience store. But I can't speak for the credits or the double dipping or whatever. But, I'm not sure that it makes sense to require the applicant to have a separate path.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Don. It's the double dipping, it's the credit, it's that I get confused on. But logically, I would say that the sidewalk along Shelburne Road meets the intent, and it's how it would probably be used.
This is Marla. I had the same conclusion when I was reviewing this on my own. It doesn't make sense. It's just the way I'm reading it.
Mark, I agree. It's John Wilking. I have no problem with this.
Okay. Anyone else on the board?
This is Alyssa. I agree as well.
Okay. So it sounds like the fact that there is a sidewalk that runs north-south and connects the two sites, the board is determining meets the intent of that connectivity for pedestrian flow. All right, let's move on. Certainly have enough stuff to keep going on. So we are on, okay, item number 6. On February 4th, the board indicated they generally felt that the proposed off-site mitigation could provide credit for the trips not otherwise credited by on-site improvements. Staff recommends the board revisit the number of trips requested now that the independent technical review is complete, 139 trips. So Marla, what are you asking the board of on this item?
So the project generates 200 and something or other trips. And they've made some 242 trips. They've made some improvements that allow some credits that are sort of strict by the book credits. And then there's this other thing that says basically the board can allow other improvements. Their other improvements are to modify the sidewalk across from Shelburne Road realign, or sorry, the crosswalk across Shelburne Road, realign that, narrow the Detilio's curb cut. And we just wanted to confirm, now that everybody is sort of settled on the traffic analysis, that the board felt that those improvements were worth a credit, were worth the value of those credits were worth 139 additional cars on the road on Shelburne Road during the PM peak hour. And I'm not making a value judgment either way, but that's the question.
Okay. I'll just be honest and say I have no idea how to evaluate that statement and make a determination. Is there sort of like a quantitative or qualitative way that we do review those impacts to determine whether they're appropriate?
Also, one thing to keep in mind is that the project is generating 242 trips. So they're getting credit for about half of their trips by doing these mitigation measures. And Corey, correct me if I have this wrong, but I think what I understood when I was talking to someone else from your office is that a typical 2-lane traffic signal has a capacity of around 4,000 trips per hour. Just to give the board a sense of scale, is that right?
I don't want to, I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry, I'm not a good traffic engineer, I guess.
What would you say, what's the capacity of Shelburne Road at this location? Is that in your traffic memo somewhere that you can quickly flip to? Just to give the board a sense of scale.
So, I think congestion and capacity are a separate topic than this trip credit memo that we're talking about, because if we're talking about capacity, I would want to like start talking about the existing land uses that are out there and start subtracting that out. So there's an existing 8-pump gas station that is in operation. And so when we're adding in this 10-pump facility, really the net difference there is much less than 242 trips. So what we're talking about here, the trip credits associated with the, how the application of the LDR and the urban overlay or the traffic overlay district. I would say that this 139 net difference is a little different than both what the technical analysis presented and what the analysis that we tried to come up with. I think that it's this analysis that you're quoting here doesn't give us the credit for the adjacent roadway network, basically the back connection to Pine Street from the through the Burlington Plaza, Hannaford parking lot. It does give us a little bit of a credit for the common use there, the commercial to commercial, people that will go grocery shopping will go to the convenience store and vice versa. It is all very complicated. There is no quantitative way to say that this is an improvement. So the improvement to the pedestrian network is worth some number of trips. That's not really something that you can do. All you can really do is look to the documents that the city has prepared in the past. They have the bicycle and pedestrian plan and like the bike ped committee. This is a high priority project that they've wanted and they haven't been able to get built. And this is an opportunity to have that happen. And all really the land use is not really changing all that much. You're getting a much cleaner project there. Marla suggested there was, I think, 3 mitigation items, kind of offsite items. I would argue that there's more mitigation there, just in the sense that the whole site is being cleaned up. What is currently now one giant stretch of asphalt will be improved to, have this green strip, have some nice lighting, and as well as that Detilio transition and the pedestrian crossing. So I think that really there's a range of trips that we're saying aren't kind of accounted for in sort of in this calculation methodology in the LDR that is doesn't really have the application of credits and everything. It's all, I hate to say the word arbitrary, but I feel like it's a little bit arbitrary in the way that we're saying that, a 1/10 of an acre is for get 15 trips, or, I'm making that up now. I think it's 1 acre gets 15 trips or something. It's like, I'm not really sure what that's based on. So we're trying to like come up with the best use of this land within the existing transportation network. When you look at, if we want to look at congestion separately, our traffic impact study said that, the corridor is at capacity essentially right now. We're going to add, maybe 20 or 30 trips. I forget exactly what it says in our traffic impact study. But that's not going to like be the straw there that's going to end up making everything fail. And in fact, VTrans is doing a whole corridor-wide signal project at Queen City Park, at the Burlington Plaza signal, and at the Hannaford Drive signal to the south, and all the way down, I'm pretty sure, to the Fayette Drive, where they'll be doing a lot of signal optimization. And so
It's actually going all the way down into Shelburne, to Webster Road.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so even more so, like a very comprehensive project to really maximize the capacity of that roadway. And this, gas station redevelopment of an existing gas station has a very negligible effect at these two intersections or at the driveway itself.
I'm John Anderson. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I've had some technical difficulties, so I'm calling in. But I guess I'm sort of not quite understanding the context of the questioning. So maybe we can just review how we got here. I thought we had said, look, we're doing a huge amount of traffic improvements. And looking at it just from just looking at it, everything we're doing, getting rid of Datillo, the bike path, and all we're really doing is a net change of adding 2 pumps to our site. But if you look at that just from without quantifying things, that clearly we passed the test. So at that point, we did the best job that can be done to quantify the numbers, but the ordinance just doesn't have guidance to quantify the benefits. It leaves it up to the board. And I thought, based on statements that the board had made previously, that just looking at it was pretty obvious that, wow, this is a huge improvement, and let's go forward with it. So I'll stop there.
Well, I think one thing to take into consideration is that, we are, one thing, Marla, if I can ask you, have we gotten any documentation that the Datilio's is getting rid of the pump stations and reducing their curb cut, since it's being sort of like attached to this project's review?
Yeah, I brought that up last time. This is Skip Valley.
Yep.
I have an agreement with the owner of the property to do that.
And has that been submitted to staff?
It's not. I mean, we don't typically submit formal agreements of that matter at this point.
Yes, we'd be happy to have that as a condition, though, wouldn't we?
Oh, for sure. That's part of the project.
Okay. I've gotten, testimony or, affirmation from you that you do have an agreement and that you will be submitting.
That is the case.
Okay. And
the agreement this is on is the agreement in writing. Mr. Valley.
I can't hear the question.
It's been in writing.
Don, do you want to type it in the chat?
I think someone needs to mute the phone, but.
Oh, yep. How do I just look? I'll call back in.
You're okay, John. John, I think you're okay. I think we're settled. I think there's yeah, we're good.
so the question Dawn had was, is the agreement in writing?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The question Dawn had was, is the agreement in writing that could be submitted to staff as part of the condition?
This is part of a much larger agreement. So, and again, these agreements aren't typically submitted, but I could suggest to you that a condition for this project would be that those two pumps would depart and the curb cut would be lessened.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Marla, let me ask you this, because I don't think we want to belabor this issue too much more, but you know, how again, I guess I'm still looking for more guidance, because stepping in as chair on this is what are you looking for the board? How do we make that determined whether the independent technical review for 139 trips is something we can weigh in on at this point?
So the independent technical review sort of concluded that the credit for offsite mitigation, how much credit to give, is up to the board's discretion, because there's not a specific prescribed number of trips allowable. So if you've taken all the testimony you need to make that decision, we can just move on.
Okay. Does the board have any other questions, or think we have enough testimony?
I think we're good, Mark. Thank you.
Okay.
I would add that I believe there was testimony at the last hearing, or at least the one in February, with the Bike Ped Committee strongly, supported the improved crossing there. So I'll just remind everybody of that.
Yes, and any previous testimony given in any other previous hearings will be part of the public record and part of our board's decision. Okay, moving on to item number 7. Staff has reviewed the proposed configuration, recommends the board require the applicant to reconfigure the proposed sidewalk at the west end of the crosswalk by replacing and expanding the final section of pavement to reduce the angle required of bicycles using the crossing shown in orange in the below screenshot.
This was based on the comment of the Bike Ped Committee asking, they understood that they couldn't get a perfect alignment because there was electrical transformers and all those sort of things happening there. We took a look at this and thought there may be some happy medium where there still is sort of a slowdown required, because the response from RSG was, we don't want there to be a direct line, because then people are just going to kind of barrel out into Shelburne Road. But we thought there may be some sort of happy medium, as shown in the orange here.
Yeah, Marla, that seems to make sense. Is the applicant amenable to having conditioned that the plan will be amended to reflect that type of, as shown in orange?
Yeah, this is Chris Gallipo, and that's a pretty minor change. We don't have a problem with it. The only thing that Corey and I discussed was just the one thing that allows would be a biker to potentially not stop and go through the intersection. So in Corey and our opinion, by not doing that, you actually would have a bike dismount and probably make it safer. But if that's what the board would prefer, we're fine with it.
I would. This is Corey Mack. Chris and I did review this, and I think it's a balance of convenience versus safety. I think that most bikes are going to stop when they get to the busy road anyway. So I don't think many people will just barrel through there. But it is nice. Often it's good to try to redirect pedestrians to look to the direction of oncoming traffic. So this does address that to some degree, and I think that it could be a good solution for both parties.
Okay, well, let's move on. Item number 8, as it pertains to the entrance being principal and a focal point, staff note the entrance features none of the elements described in the related criterion. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to improve this entrance to a better criterion. This relates to, is this the front entrance, Marla?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to step in and comment on this. If we can go to the probably the rendering, perspective renderings page.
Angela, this is where there was a supplemental as well, but it looks like this is probably okay.
Okay. Well, unless the supplemental had some, I know that the supplemental just have like a little canopy entrance or something over it, but regardless, I apologize because the last meeting I was remote, and normally I have access to these files and also have access to the presentation. The server was down and I had no access to any files, so I was just getting audio with no video or anything like that. So the testimony that was given, I really wasn't able to weigh in on. But my opinion is this still doesn't even come close with whatever little add-ons to making this building feel like it's fronted and centered on Shelburne Road. I mean, I could throw out some suggestions and some comments and some ideas, but we're really not supposed to design this for you. But it still, to me, feels like it's a building that's rotated 90 degrees and fronted on the pumps, which is to the side of the building. And the door in from Shelburne Road looks like it's an afterthought, which is kind of what it is. It was just thrown in to meet the condition. So to me, this condition is just not being met.
This is Dawn. I would agree with Mark. When I look at the front of this building from the east, or the rendering, my eye goes right to the square setback area, which appears to me to be the front of the building. It doesn't accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
Right. And I mean, I could throw out comments like if you step the sides on either side of that front entrance back a few feet, put a building element above it, and greatly reduce the impact and overall design aesthetic of the basically primary front entrance, which is that 2-story volume that's on the side of the building, you might be able to achieve it. But, right now it's as presented and what we have before us does not meet the intent or the letter of the regs for front centered. Anyone else on the board have any comments on that?
No, I think you hit it all. Mark, it's John. I think you hit it all in terms of what our requirements are.
Okay. I asked the applicant, do you have any comments on that? Would you want to take another stab at, greatly improving?
This is Skip. We'll take another stab at it. I just want I thought we had responded. Is the display we're looking at now the one where we made the modifications that was just submitted, or is it the initial submission?
Just to expand on what Skip said, we read the comments, and we since we got the comments, we have worked on a design, and I've suggested that when we have something better, we should submit it, whether or not the board considers it at that time, or whether or not everyone whether or not it can be considered at that time. So we've submitted a revision. I don't know if it's in front of you. You have considered additional material that we've submitted, although you've subsequently allowed staff to comment on what was submitted. So I don't know if that it might be really useful if you can put that redesign in front of us and look at it.
I think what we're seeing is what Chris sent over after the packet was published. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yes, the plans on the display right now are what was just revised by Antonio and we sent over to Marla.
All right, so we hear the board loud and clear. We're going to come back at you with something more substantial.
Okay. All right, so let's move on. I'm bouncing back and forth on my own packet. So we are on, middle of page 7.
Number 9.
Number 9, staff recommends the board discuss whether they consider the 3, in parentheses, or 7 if the canopy is not a building, front parking space is not on the existing underground storage tank, and in an existing vegetated area to be necessary and not possible to accommodate the rear and sides of existing buildings. Staff notes as discussed above, the board determined they would review the project under the land development regulations adopted on October 7, 2019, and therefore there are no required parking minimums for this use. So this is the issue of the screening of the parking and no parking to the.
So this
front of the-
particular comment pertains to parking in the front as seen from Queen City Park Road front. And then I think the next comment addresses the Shelburne Road front.
Okay, so this is the one where the 3 parking spaces and the 2 that are on the existing concrete pad are sort of to the front of the canopy building from Queen City Park Road.
Yes.
Mark, it's John Working. I would argue that due to the pitch up to these spaces, they are already screened from Queen City Park Road. I really don't see an issue with the Queen City Park Road side. I may have issues with Shelburne Road, but that's my take.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with you, John. I think that the Queen City Park Road is, is not the predominant prevailing issue with parking on this site. It's more the parking from Shelburne Road. So, unless anyone has any further thoughts, I think we should move on to the parking from the front of the building from Shelburne Road. Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 10. The applicant has requested the board find 14.06B2C not applicable to parking, which is on the Queen City Park Road side of the building, and instead find it exempt under 14.06B2B4. Staff recommends the board discuss whether to accept the applicant's request.
So it sounds like you guys are fine with it being, considering it being screened.
Right.
So you don't need the exemption.
Correct. Yep. So those 5 spaces, sounds like the board is fine with them. Queen City Park. Okay, moving on to item number 11, the applicant could address this problem. This is the issue of using the building, the fuel canopy in the restaurant building with the width of it and parking ratio, correct? Half of the width of the building can be parking to the sides?
Yes.
Okay, so the applicant could address this problem on the Shelburne Road side by increasing the width of the building or several other solutions. Staff considers the parking along Shelburne Road is not exempt under 14.06B2B4, as it is in an area of the site which is proposed to be completely reconstructed and recommends the board discuss. This is where we should discuss the supplemental, Marla, with the building and parking dimension sketch.
I did not include that in the stuff Delilah has on her desktop, because that when I got it from Chris, it didn't say this is for the board. It said just checking to show, just showing you this. But Delilah, I did send it in an email to the board if you wanted to pull it that way. Or maybe just pull up the site plan. I mean, it really just had a couple.
Yeah, why don't we just pull up the site plan? We could discuss
Which one's the best one to look at for this discussion, do you think?
Probably a couple pages before the traffic one that you were on. Let me see what I can do.
This one? No.
That's existing conditions.
Marla, Delilah, Mark, it's John. Doesn't this really, if the applicant turned the building so the front faced Shelburne Road and it was wider rather than deeper, wouldn't this disappear? I think so.
I think so too. It would accomplish, it would kill 2 birds with 1 stone, or get close to killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
So if I could ask the applicant and someone that's familiar, because I don't have dimensions on, well, maybe there's dimensions elsewhere, because to me, it looks like you almost have it a square envelope, while it reads as being, a rectangle with a small square, entrance on it. is the envelope of the full width and full depth almost a square? Like, could you turn this building 90 degrees?
Could I just ask Chris? I thought we had been over this, and that somehow there's a misunderstanding that the width of the building along Shelburne Road is actually is actually what it needs to be, and it
John,
somehow
so John, I saw Chris's note and went back and reviewed that, and so yeah, I agree with you that we miscalculated the width of the total building. The width of the building is 38 feet, and the 48 feet, and the canopy is 32 or something that totals 8. And that's fine. And we thought it was 79. The problem is that we had also misinterpreted the regulations, and I had an opportunity to talk to the board about this in deliberations. So we're just catching you up now. This standard is that if you project the parking, do I still have drawing control? I do. Okay.
Yes,
So
you
if
do.
Awesome. If you project the building up against the front lot line, the front lot line is here, so there's a line here, and then there's a line that is this long, and that is the width of the building. If I change my color to, say, orange here, the width of the parking projected to the front lot line is this, plus this, plus this. And so the width of the parking has to be 50% or less. The width, the total sum of the orange lines has to be half of blue lines. And so the parking is wider than half of the width of the building if you project all of the parking and all of the building up to the street.
And can I ask by how much?
I guess, Chris, you probably have a better idea for that, right?
But going back, Marla, I thought that you, John, and I had talked about that the dimensions were measured along the front facade of the building and not the property. So are we, is this a new change, or is this?
So I went back and talked to Paul about how the board had interpreted this regulation in the past. And what he told me is what I've shown here in the blue and orange, which is the board has historically said project everything up to the front property line, and that's how you measure it.
Can we just read? All right, this is Chris again. Could we just read? I mean, Marla, do you have that section of the LDRs? Just because my recollection is that you, John, and we had talked about this, and John can certainly chime in too. But I thought the rules actually said along the front face of the building.
This
is that your recollection,
the
John?
most. I would be happy to read it. It's at the bottom of page 6, and it's very difficult to understand what it means. It says, where more than one building exists or is proposed to exist on a lot, the total width of all parking areas located to the sides of the building at the building line shall not exceed 1/2 of the width of all buildings located at the building line.
So based upon that definition and the testimony that John and I provided was that is along the building line. So we're taking the front face of the building and the width of the canopy, and we meet that regulation, and that was the updated sketch, I believe. Is that correct?
Is the building, as John Wilking, is the building line the front face, or is it any face?
That's up to you guys.
Honestly, even if you include both face, like the recessed 2-story, entrance and the face of the building on Shelburne Road and the width of the canopy, that comes out to what, 99 feet, I think. And then the parking I'm getting is at least about 75 feet, at least. So you're well over the 50%.
So wouldn't wouldn't we still be looking at that though as the width of the building and the parking to the side of the building at the building line? So if we look at the front, I mean, I think it's really a question as to the definition. But if you look at the front of the building and the width of the parking on either side in the canopy, and you use the dimensions that I sent to Marla in that sketch, we would be complying.
So,
I think it comes
just to
down to
rephrase what you're saying here, you're saying you would want to exclude, oh, the pen's not working, the parking sort of west of the canopy, because you're saying that is not at the building. You want to include only the parking south of the building because that parking is in line with the building. Yes.
John, do you remember the discussion? I mean, I know you had provided a memo. Can you hear me, John?
Yeah, I think Marla's question, the answer to Marla's question is yes.
Okay.
I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, the problem is that the parking to the north, the however many that is, 9 spots, 10 spots to the north of the building, isn't behind the building. It's still on the side because it aligns essentially with the rear of the building. So I don't know how that becomes exempt.
I found the email that you guys are talking about. This is, I found the email that
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and sort of what is it? What are we referring to with this email?
I think it's the same drawing, just with some dimensions on it.
Yeah, the sole purpose of this was to show, because the last 2 meetings we've had, this same staff comment has been on there, and we had kind of resolved it the last meeting, and then when we got the staff report, the dimensions were incorrect. So we just sent this just for the purpose to show the actual building width and the parking. This was only just to basically show what the actual dimensions are.
And Chris, I just want to clarify, I wouldn't say that the issue was resolved. I definitely saw some confused faces on the board at the last meeting, which is why it's in the staff comments again, because the board was very unsure that they understood the issue correctly.
Well, I would say that the way I understand the issue with the 50% on either side of the front building face, that it doesn't meet the regs.
So,
this is Chris again. Sorry, go ahead, John.
So I guess my question would be, I guess staff has not wanted to resolve stuff on the fly. My question would be to Skip. We haven't. This is the first time we've heard about this issue. I'd like to give, if we can have the opportunity to do so, I'd like to have the opportunity to address it. I was under the understanding that we met the criteria except for a mathematical error, and have been proceeding on that assumption for quite a while. But if that's not right, then we're going to have to look at the design.
I'm happy to look at it, but I'm not prepared to redesign this site again. We've been to 7 meetings, okay? And the purpose of site plan is for staff and others to tell us what the fundamental issues are with the site. And were we to have known that this was a fundamental issue of parking 9 meetings ago, we'd have completely redesigned the site. We're not moving the building. This is like a jigsaw puzzle, okay? We're not moving the building.
I think I raised the issue of parking being a major issue 9 meetings ago.
Well, and nobody's discussed that we're talking about two buildings here. And at least half of those parking spots are behind the canopy building.
So that's another issue I have. We're calling it a building, but in footprint, in looking down from bird's eye view only, but the actual use of the building to block the parking spots doesn't actually fly. You look right through this quote unquote building.
I mean, I'll let John discuss the ordinance, but I think the ordinance refers to a building. This qualifies as a building.
Can you hear me? The ordinance, I think you have to look to the definition in the ordinance. And the definition of a building in the ordinance makes it clear that a building is a structure with a roof that has supports.
That's fine, John. It's John Wilking. You can claim one side, but then you can't claim the other. You can't get both sides.
I'm not sure I understand that, John.
You're arguing that it's a building. That's fine. The parking regulations are what they are. They've always been there. We've always made it very clear that you can't have parking visible from the street. This is a standard that exists. You guys, lack of knowledge of it is not a good excuse. You can't view more than 50% of the parking as compared to the width from the public. So it is what it is.
The other issue
so what
is
I'm
the purpose.
So what I'm saying is that until 10 minutes ago, I thought we were in full compliance with that, having reacted to staff comments for quite a while. The only comment that I saw was that there was a mathematical error.
John,
having said that,
you can have as few parking spaces as you want, so you can make them all go away, and that would be in compliance.
Yeah, but then the owner has the realistic concern of how much parking you need, and I have understood that the board understands that and sort of disagrees with the city council's decision to waive all parking. But I think I think where we go from here is we've got to see if we can answer this. It's unfortunate that we are where we are. And I hear Skip saying loud and clear that he's not redesigning the site. So
okay, the thing is that the whole purpose of the fact that the regulations say you can use a building screens the parking behind it is that it screens it. And a canopy with 4 columns, regardless of if it's defined in the regulations as a building, doesn't screen anything. So it's kind of like, it doesn't pass the intent of the regulation test.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
I would agree as well, but it could be made up with potentially with landscaping and so forth. And this is just a problematic site.
Yeah, I mean, there's as you pull into the site, there's no screening of these parking spots. And the canopy, by calling it a building, is not screening them. You're looking right through the canopy. So I just don't think you're meeting the regulations of screening parking in the front of the building. But I think at this point we should move on.
So this next comment, the applicant provided rendering showing how the retaining walls will look from adjacent properties. The applicant submitted a revised sorry, I just dropped something. I don't know if it was loud for you guys, it was loud for me. They provided a rendering after the packet was submitted. So if Delilah, you can pull that guy up. I think it's possibly in that same document.
Well, in the packet, there's a bunch of like distant elevations with landscaping in it. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
This one?
No, keep going.
No, that's just that's the updated renderings, but is
Oh,
it,
I'm sorry. I guess I misinterpreted. I guess it must just have been the end of, yeah. So it's
Is
in
it
the
in the
regular
packet?
packet. My apologies.
okay.
Yeah, keep going. It's after the further those, but
These
keep
guys.
going.
Yes.
Yep, but keep going. Keep going. That's the one.
This guy?
Yeah, that's Marla, that's correct. That's the one looking from the residential property.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's a few pages after that. So the staff comment here, if I flip back to it, there's some retaining walls. I think the applicant provided this as a handout at the last meeting, and we just wanted to make sure the board had the opportunity to really look at it. There was no particular concerns. It was just, take a real look at it and see if there's any questions.
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions either.
This is looking, we were looking at it from the west. This one is looking at it from the west, correct?
Right, from the Hannaford's Plaza, from the residential
Okay, I
apartment.
see. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. To the left, those 6 trees, those are the trees that are right up below the strip of parking that we keep talking about.
Right.
And then to the far right, you can see the road coming down from Sovereign Road.
And those sort of big gray areas are the retaining wall heights. And so you can see that the building is part of the building. It's very clear that the building is sort of a different color in there. The building forms part of the retaining wall.
Yep, I see that. Actually, the building fits in nicely with the Hannaford's parking lot now with that giant retaining wall.
Okay, so if there's no questions, move on to comment 13.
Okay. At the previous hearing, the applicant indicated they felt they would be able to address the outstanding comments of the city stormwater section. The applicant provided revised materials on 4/8/2020, which staff forwarded city stormwater section. Staff anticipates it will have an update by the time of the hearing. This was one where there was one of the supplement with stormwater comments.
That's correct, yep.
Okay. Anything in there that of significant note that we need to discuss that's sort of like deal breakers, or is it just comments that will be addressed and resolved?
I think
Should we
that
go through it
given the fact that, sorry, I'm muted, no, I'm not. Given that there is a potential for closing, I think that if the applicant is prepared to respond to these comments, I know that Andres, who did the design, is on the call. I think the board should take that testimony now, even if it's a little technical.
All right.
Yeah, this is Andres. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Would the board like me to provide some response on these 2 points?
Is there someone who needs to mute their phone, please?
Okay, so on the first point related to the seasonal high groundwater, I actually responded today with a memo, which I believe Chris Gallipo forwarded in, responding to these 2 points. But essentially, I confirmed that we re-excavated the soil pit, and we were able to verify that, by looking at the soil conditions, not the comment was related to the fact that the concern was that the soils were backfilled, and we were not looking at actually the native soil, but in fact, I confirmed we were looking at the native soil. So we were able to reconfirm the elevation of the seasonal high groundwater table, which was the comment, the first comment. The second comment was related to the peak discharge. that was basically at the point where the connection is proposed to the Hannaford catch basin system. And the comment was that in the proposed condition, there was a slight increase in the 25-year peak discharge to that catch basin system. So we had slightly expanded the bioretention treatment system down on the lower portion of the site. And by doing that, we were able to reduce the post-development peak discharge to below the pre-development level. And so what went in with my memo today was a revised model which supported that. So I think, you know, with those 2 points back, I think that those were the comments that I saw on the last submittal.
Andres, what is the answer to the capacity of the downstream system? If you could summarize that in a sentence or two.
We didn't actually model the capacity of the downstream system since we were able to expand the bioretention and, you know, reduce flows from the existing flow, then yeah, we just left it at that.
Okay. All right, so this memo we have has 7 points. Is there any others that we need to review in detail, or was that sort of the gist of the summary that you revised it, now it meets the reduced flow?
Yeah, there were just the two. So this is an older memo, and then the two comments from Dave Wheeler were the two outstanding things that Andres just addressed. So I think that, you know, we should definitely leave the hearing open in order to allow the stormwater section to provide the board some additional testimony on Andres's responses, you know, regardless of whether the board decides to leave it open for other reasons.
Okay. All right.
You know, being a stormwater person, I do understand what Andres is saying, and I think there's enough information there for the stormwater section to complete their review.
Okay. Board have any comments on that? So Marla, you're saying that based on those comments alone, the hearing should be left open, or that they have resolved the points?
Without having reviewed the modeling, I don't want to say that they've resolved the points. What I'm saying is I think they've provided enough testimony for our stormwater section to determine whether they've resolved them. Because the board can't take additional testimony, I would recommend leaving it open for the board to take comments from the city stormwater section.
Okay. Okay. All right. Moving on to item number 14. Staff recommends the board discuss whether they have any additional questions for the applicant as it pertains to adequacy of circulation for delivery vehicles. This goes back to the truck turning movement diagram we were looking at earlier. One question I have for the applicant is your truck turning movement. You're supposed to, is this facility going to be 24/7?
It will be 24 hours.
Okay. So how do you plan on controlling occupancy and customer parking when, you know, you're on the left side, the fuel delivery truck looks like it clips, you know, 4 or 5 of the parking spaces and the handicap spot just coming in for a delivery?
So this is Chris Gallipo again. Otto was at the last meeting, who is RL Valley General Manager, and we talked about this at the last meeting as well. But RL Valley, you know, they have a lot of sites across the state, New Hampshire, New York, a lot of sites with actually less room than this, and they have to manage the delivery of fuels during off-peak times. You know, this site actually is a nice location because you can drive in and you can drive out. There's other locations where, and it's not just a RL Valley site, there's a lot of sites where the trucks actually, you know, pull in and back out. So in this sense, both deliveries of fuel and goods will occur, you know, at times when they don't want to impact the patrons. So that's kind of a logistical exercise for the operational, functions of the store.
Please, can you hear me? Please remember that one definition of this project is as a convenience store, and by definition, convenience stores have to be convenient, which means that you're turning your customers over very quickly. So I think that this can be addressed simply by making sure that the employee parking is not located in the spaces we need, and then clearing the spaces as necessary. And I think that's what Valley does at other sites when the delivery truck is expected.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'm very naive when it comes to this, the delivery of fuel. How often do you get deliveries?
Well, Don, that's a good question. Obviously, it depends on how much business you're doing. I mean, my sense is, for this site, it would probably get 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Skip.
Yeah, and as a practical matter, if the truck drives in and there's a car, in that parking spot that affects his exit, he's just got to wait. I mean,
sure.
And customers generally aren't in there for that long a period of time. And then, and on more congested sites, I think we make it a practice to try to do the deliveries for exactly this reason at off-peak times. I mean, if you have a delivery late in the evening, I don't think the parking issue is going to be much of an issue at all.
Thank you.
Marla, is there any regulations that preclude sort of like deliveries after a certain time period, or is it pretty much wide open on Shelburne Road?
I'm gonna kick that one to Delilah.
Okay.
Don't think there is. There is, as long as the business is open, they can deliveries.
I mean, it makes sense. I'm just asking the question. Okay. Okay, board have any other comments on this? All right, moving on to item number 15. Staff recommends the board discuss whether they have any further questions for the applicant as it pertains to emergency access. Is this the second sketch on that same sheet showing the fire access or fire truck movement on the site?
Okay, let me go back to it. Sorry.
Sure.
And anyone can draw on this. I've given you the ability to do that if you want to point something out.
Okay, so on the right-hand side, is that showing the fire truck movement on the site?
This is Chris Gallipo, and that is correct. I don't know if you guys, when you guys deliberated, if Marla told you, but both Skip Hotner and I have tried reaching out to the fire chief. I know 2 meetings ago, we had told you guys that we wanted to meet with the fire chief. We sent out numerous emails and phone calls. I actually talked to the fire chief, and the model that they want to use, they actually, have on acetane down there at the fire station, and it's not even an auto turn movement. We basically, because we can get a tractor trailer truck through the site, we're not really worried about getting a fire truck. They've got some logistical things considerations they take into account about whether or not they would park on Route 7 or if they access the site from the south. Marla had said last time they would be coming from the south, so that's why we've shown that turning movements. I have, again, emailed the fire chief, but I think with this COVID-19 and everything, I'm sure he's extremely busy, but we just haven't heard back. So the thing we do have is we have, a fair amount of room. We can get a tractor trailer truck in and out. And I think given the size of a fire truck, we shouldn't have an issue. But like I said, we tried to get confirmation from the fire chief, but we haven't been able to.
Okay. Does this turning movement show a fire truck coming in from the south, turning in, and then backing out and pulling back out nose first?
That is correct, and the reason being is that we were told in an earlier, it's actually in the earlier staff report, and maybe this one as well, that they would like to keep a certain distance from the fuel tanks for NFPA reasons, I understand. And so if they wanted to access the east side of the proposed building and they didn't want to drive north, that would be an option. They also would have the option to access through Hannaford. So I feel like we actually have very good access for them. It's just unfortunately we've not been able to get comments from them.
Okay. So that's another reason that we need to leave this open, is to make sure we get the fire chief ability to directly comment on this. Give you time to actually try to get a meeting with him. All right.
Chris, if I could make a comment, I think this is Marla. I think that what you're showing, the fire chief was feeling like that was not an acceptable movement. He's been very responsive to my emails in the past week. So if you wanted to show, a couple different sheets with a couple different movements and just send those over as an email, that may be a good way to get a response.
And I'm happy to do that. The last time I spoke with Chief Terry Francis, he actually suggested that we meet down at his office and go through the movements. And so I had both Otto Hansen and Skip Hockner. We're game to meet whenever, but at the same point, if I can talk to him on the phone, Marla, or if you want to have a conference call, we're happy to do whatever movements he wants to see. There's no problem.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is he's better at responding than making open suggestions, I guess, is how I've been successful in getting his attention lately.
Okay. All right, moving on. Item number 16, staff recommends the board review the lighting technical review memo and discuss whether they need any further information from either the applicant or technical reviewer to make their determination on lighting criterion. Last time, I remember discussions, at least last time I was involved, about the light spillage onto Shelburne Road. Was that been resolved, or has that been clarified? And is there any other issues that we know of?
So the lighting memo kind of summarizes that the independent technical reviewer worked with the applicant's lighting consultant. The lighting consultant has made some modifications to the plan. The technical review concludes that there are a couple places where the strict standards are not being met, but they think that they have done the best that they can, and that it's sort of consistent with an urban site.
Okay. Just looking at the plan. Okay, that didn't sound like we need any further.
No, I think we're under control there.
Yep. Okay. Anything else from anyone else on the board on this issue? Okay, moving on. Item number 17, staff recommends the board discuss whether they have any further questions for the applicant as it pertains to noise. So it sounds, if I'm reading this, the applicant prepared a noise study of ambient sound levels on the property. Staff notes the applicant says they performed daytime and nighttime measurements and found the background noise levels were on an average of 50 dBA at night and 54 dBA during the day. And now it is 45 based on 1 hour average measuring point with the property in which the noise emanates, used for residential purposes. So now in 60, it's commercial. So we're adjacent to residential. So what does that mean to us with the 50 at night and 54 during the day, and with being adjacent to residential with the 45 dBA limit? Because obviously we're fine on the commercial purposes.
So the noise study concludes that sort of the background noise is above 45, not
Oh, I
the
see.
noise generated by the site.
Okay. So it sounds like we're fine.
The noise study concluded that the noise from the site was not measurable relative to the background noise.
Got it. Okay. All right. The board have any other questions or comments on number 17 as it pertaining to noise?
No, but it would be interesting to see if any public show up related to the residential behind us.
Yeah, and we'll get to that when we just have one more comment. Final staff comment for addressing is the Champlain Water District indicated by email to staff on April 13th that because they understand the applicant is continuing to work to address CWD's comments, they recommend the board continue the hearing to allow those efforts to be completed. Staff recommends board consider this recommendation in light of the other issues identified herein in making the decision on whether to close or continue the hearing. Beth, the applicant, where are you in terms of working with CWD?
This is Chris Gallipo again. We're actually working with CWD as well as Aldrich and Elliott. And Aldrich and Elliott is actually CWD's, one of the engineering firms that they mainly consult with. So we're currently evaluating the options, and there's a couple different paths that we have moving forward. And, as we said in prior meetings, we're fully aware that, we don't have a project without CWD's sign off on this, and that we're just looking for the best option that'll satisfy CWD. There's really two options. Well, there's two different kind of modifications to the options. The goal is that we're going to relocate the line around the south side of the building. The question is whether or not we replace the line in the sleeve under Route 7, or if we have a tie-in with some thrust blocks and some restrained joints. Aldrich and Elliott's done an evaluation on that, and currently, we're discussing that further with CWD and the applicant. So we will have more information on that.
Okay. All right, that concludes staff comments. Open it up to the board. Do they have any direct questions for the applicant?
Sorry, Chris, was there a timeline in there that I missed? Or do you not have a timeline right now?
On the CWD, a timeline?
Yeah. Any sense of that?
I would say we're very close to knowing which path we're going to go in, and then once we have that, we would basically provide plans that would be submitted to the Water Supply Division for approval. So I think we're close. It's just a matter of, figuring out what works best for CWD.
Okay, but it's not like that, oh yeah, Aldrich and Elliott said they'd be done by Friday or anything like that.
Aldrich and Elliott has provided a study for costs and the different options, and so we're evaluating that, and we obviously need to meet with CWD. I did talk to Joe Duncan about the results of the study, but like I said, we have to pick which option is going to work the best for all parties. But we know we need CWD sign off, or we don't have a project.
Marla, I guess this is a question from Skip. I mean, about how much detail the board would like to see. We're happy to have this conditioned upon an agreement, which we have to have anyways, which is, a lengthy legal document with CWD, depending on which method we decide to proceed with them. Are you asking for actually a signed, agreement with them at this point, or do you just want to approve of the design that we would then have discussions with them about implementing?
The latter. We would want CWD to say that they're satisfied with the design.
With the design or with whatever agree? So you want us to have a signed agreement with CWD?
No, we just need verbal confirmation from them to us. I talk to them all the time. And they said, we're still working on it. Just hold a little longer. We understand this is in progress. And we think because they're making a good effort that we'd rather get this resolved than, have it be an issue going forward.
Okay. We'll get it to that point.
Okay. All right. So does anyone on the board have any further comments? If not, open it up to John.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
I am
Open it
too.
up to, you're good? So open it up to if anyone in the audience listening or on the call has any comments. You want to put it in the chat or, speak up? Hearing none. Marla, applicant, do you guys have a date in mind in the future to continue this to?
Yeah, that's sort of where I was getting with my questions. So we're full for May 19th, very full.
Marla, can I interrupt? What have we left hanging today?
Yep. So the things that have left, I think that's a great question, John. Thank you. The things that have been left, they said they wanted to work on were, let's see.
The stormwater comments?
The stormwater comments was something that we can deal with. I can get that turned around really quickly. Basically, okay, so let me start with the end answer. We have room on May 5th if there's not a lot of work involved. That's the next hearing, so we need everything to turn around really quickly. So stormwater is one, we can turn that around quickly. CWD, it sounds like maybe not turning around quite so quickly. Meeting with fire department, I'd say, is a medium length thing. And then the parking thing, the applicant wanted some time on. I can't imagine that'll be ready tomorrow, which would be when we would need things for the May 5th hearing. So,
And then there's the facade, the front facade.
oh, and then there's the facade, right.
So basically, Marla, those four key issues, right? There are four outstanding issues that need to be addressed.
I think it's 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
But to get on the
I just
May
wrote them
5th
down. Stormwater, CWD, facade, parking, and fire, in no particular order.
So, I mean, depending on where we end up on parking, we could get most of those to you tomorrow. But Chris, I don't think you're going to be able to have something with CWD tomorrow, are you? In a sufficiently developed form.
Marla, do we need CWD? Aren't we just saying that it's required that they have agreement with CWD to move forward?
CWD felt very strongly that this is the major transmission main. This may be the meeting you weren't there, but they testified that this provides water to about 50% of their customers.
That's right. I'm sorry. They asked for us to continue until it was agreed on. Thank you.
So given that, I think, Marla, it's pretty unrealistic to be able to get stuff to you for the 5th. So what's our next option then?
And you said May 19th is?
May 19th is definitely out. Let's see. It feels like June 2nd is not great. We have 4 things on that night, 2 of which are big, 2 of which are small. So I guess, I don't know, what are people's senses? I don't want to put on too many things when we're still remote because it just takes longer. Which would put us into June 16th.
But we are down to 5 issues, so perhaps we could fit it in on the earlier date.
Yeah, I suppose that. Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to agree with John. If we could just literally have it as those 5 issues, that we review. I think we're pretty clear on what we're looking for. They're not easy issues, but.
I'm sure the applicant agrees with me. This has been dragging on too long.
Okay, I'm good with June 2nd.
Okay.
Let's just make sure we're focused. One of the other applications is a similar continuation because of a few small issues, so that'll be good. And then the other 2 that are bigger, we'll just.
And Marla, what's the date by which you need stuff to meet the June 2nd?
For June 2nd, let me pull up my calendar. So I would need it on May 20th.
Okay,
So a
so a
month.
month. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so Marla, do we need to do anything on the subdivision, or is it just continue that at the same, along with this one?
I would continue them both together.
Okay. So hearing no further discussion on the matter, I make a motion that we continue final plat application SC 1931 of Arle Valley and continue site plan application SP 1939 of Arle Valley to June 2nd.
I'll second that.
All right, Dawn seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mark, for chairing.
All
So
right, Marla.
we've
Yes,
lost Matt. Do you want to just close out, Mark, and do other business?
So we'll close. Well, what other business do we have tonight?
I don't know. That's up to you. You're the chair.
You
Good night,
there
everybody.
for the minutes.
Good night, everyone. We did the minutes early, so at this point, I call the Development Review Board meeting for April 21st adjourned.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Marla. Thanks, Delilah.
Thanks, everyone.
You.